Begin first with a pledge of I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please feel free to sit. I believe that we are suffering from the consequences of living in a world that seems to have gone crazy. So let's take a look at some of the concepts and the reasons why this is. Alienation. It's the experience of being isolated from social groups and activities. Future shock. It's a state of stress due to rapid social and/or technological change. Information overload is the overwhelming glut of information that exceeds our ability to process and make decisions. We live in a time and a place where these effects are widespread and rampant. Stress, anxiety, depression, anger, and frustration are at epidemic, indeed pandemic levels. But we don't have a vaccine for stress, depression, anxiety, or indecision. All we have is each other. And we need each of us to be at our best. We need to find our calm in our parts of this storm. We must not make decisions from a place of fear and anger. We must help each other to find each other's calm. Let me close with a few of the core messages from one of my favorite books, Robert Fulgram's book, All I Really Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. These are a few of his core messages. Share. Play fair. Don't hit people. Put things back where you found them. Clean up your own mess. Don't take things that don't belong to you. Say you're sorry when you hurt someone. Wash your hands before you eat. Flush and parenthetically put the seat down. And, oh, geez, it didn't come up for me. And the last one that I wanted to share with you is warm cookies and cold milk are good for you. So I hope these last two thoughts put a smile at least in your heart. And if they did, you can make the world a little bit better of a place tomorrow by passing that smile forward. Our world needs smiles. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Cherokee. Your words of wisdom, wisdom shared by others. All right, Tony, I'd like to ask you to have our roll call.
Councilmember Shaw. Here. Yakovich.
Present.
Neese.
Here.
Ewald.
He's absent.
Joy.
Present.
Chariki.
Here.
Harrington.
She's absent.
Present.
Ronning. Here. Oyette.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
And Mayor Cole will be coming in late.
Okay, and Councilperson Ewald has an excused absence. Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve August 9th and August 23rd minutes together. Mr. Boyette?
I'd like to move to approve the minutes for August 9th, August 23rd, 2021 as read.
I see Mr. Neese, second. Okay, any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. We have no proclamations right now. I have one courtesy that oh, we do have a proclamation.
August 23rd minutes also.
We did it both.
We did them both at the same time.
Sorry, thank you.
Yep. I'd like to invite up Sarah Music. She is, for courtesy, she is the chairperson of the, please come and join us here at the podium. She's the chairperson of the Suicide Prevention Coalition for Yellowstone Valley, and she just wanted to share a few minutes with us about her great work. She's working with a great team of leaders from all parts of the community, and you'll be having a forum this Friday.
Awesome. Thank you, Councilman. It is a great evening, and I'm so excited to get to speak with you guys for a couple of minutes. Suicide is often a topic we don't want to bring up, but it's something that we need to talk more about. Unfortunately, 1 in 5 people in Yellowstone County have strongly considered suicide, and suicide continues to be ranked in the top 5 in Montana. And we don't want that in our state. So the Suicide Prevention Coalition of Yellowstone Valley was established 15 years ago by a group of organizations and concerned community members just getting together and trying to work on suicide in our community. Now we are striving to provide culturally competent education about suicide and also breaking down barriers to suicide prevention and giving resources to those that need hope. Part of that is we are putting on an awesome convention or conference here on Friday, and it will be virtual, so anybody can attend. 9 to 1:30, completely free. And our theme this year is going to be breaking down barriers within suicide prevention with diverse populations. So we're really focusing on LGBTQ, veterans, Native Americans, and others like youth who might be more affected by suicide. And so the first half of the conference will be community members and organizations who are really working on suicide prevention within those populations here in our community. And then the second half will dive a little bit deeper into each of those separate categories and spend a little bit of time learning more what we can do as a community to support them and get them the resources they need. Thank you.
And Sarah, what is the registration? How do you register for that form?
So it's on the sheet. It's spcoalitionyv.org/conference, and you just go on there, register anytime before Friday. So yeah, it would be amazing if we could see a couple of councilmen there virtually, but yeah.
Thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
And wish you great success. I'd like to now turn to our, yes, councilperson.
Thank you. I have one more courtesy.
Yes, yes.
I really appreciate the volunteers that have participated in working at the dog park up in the Heights. There was a need for additional shelter up there, and there was a request for $5,000 in cash to actually build the foundation, the shelter. Actually, volunteers came in and took care of it all with no need for cash. So I really appreciate the council member Frank Ewald actually got together and kind of ramrodded this through and got this done over the last couple of weeks. I was out there last night just to go take a look at it and see. It was really nice to see at least the platforms there. They're going to put the frames up. Other members and Arnold donated to this, as well as the dog parks, of course, donated the shelter. So appreciate the people donating, building our parks out. And boy, was that dog park crowded. And my dog had a great time running around and visiting all the dogs. So if you haven't been up to the dog park in the Heights, it's a great park to be up in there. So
Well done.
thank you.
Well done, all of you up there in the Heights. Any other courtesies? Okay, I see no more courtesies. Council reports. Are there any reports from council recently? All right, I see. Okay, Councilperson Joy?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and Council. The CBD met this on Tuesday of last week, I believe, yes. And, or maybe it was this week, I get confused. Anyway, the result of the meeting was that the training that's necessary in order for the CBD division, community planning or development division, to really know how to spend those ARPA dollars has been postponed. So it was supposed to be already brought forward. The training has been postponed. So there isn't clear guidance yet on how the CBD can go forward in spending that money yet until that training is completed. And so it's kind of still a wait and hold pattern for that money. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that report. Any other reports? I see no other. How about administrative report? Mr. Kukulski.
Deputy Mayor Yakovich.
Nice tie you have on
Council,
there,
thank
too.
you. Yours is nice as well. Just a reminder, as you're well aware, we got a number of action items on the agenda tonight. In fact, if you count them one by one, there's 21. But the first chunk, about 10 of them, are one public hearing. So got one public hearing, but we need separate action or separate motions for each of those SIDs. Second, the the moratorium ordinances, the two moratorium ordinances at the end of the agenda were revised, and copies of those have been placed in the council's desk, and copies for the public are in the back of the room, just with some tweaks, I think, that we received from a variety of council members improving those two documents. And then we did not get any ex parte communication. And that's it, Deputy Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kukulski. Now I'd like to turn to public comment. So the public is welcome to speak on anything on consent agenda, and not to speak on, let's see, on the regular agenda for, am I correct, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem?
Item 1.
I don't see, is there, okay, 1, 8, and 9 only. Thank you, Councilperson Shaw. You are a great left hand.
I'll be here.
Items 1, 8, and 9 only.
I think it's 8. The Community Foundation TIF grant. I was here about a month ago, and the clock was ticking, and I didn't quite get to the point that I think is one of the most important points that I wanted to make, which is you drive by our building and it looks beautiful. They took really, really good care of the outside. We got some insurance money to fix the roof from them. And so that's really good, but you need to come inside and see what it's like. And we sent out to you a little brochure in the mail, and we passed out some more of them here today. And you can see that when you go inside, and you have to go down to the crawl spaces, you see that there are real significant problems. And so what we're asking for money to do the important things that we have to do to be able to open the building for the community. Things like the ADA bathroom. Right now we have sort of a half a bathroom. It would be really nice to have that. We have organizations that are asking to use the building, and we don't feel very comfortable with it. YRPA is using the building for their regular weekly meetings, but there are other people who have called us and asked. And the other question I think that was in the discussion last time was, who do we touch? And so the last page of the handout, and we alphabetized it this time, so maybe it's a little easier, but I would really think, I would think that when you look at this list, and the people who are local are in color, and you can see that the overwhelming majority of the people are local. But I would really think that almost anybody in this room would be able to find on this businesses that they work with, not-for-profit organizations that they like, various individuals who have helped us. So I think this is a broad. And we're affecting these people. We're providing them with business. We're providing them with grants. We just made a whole bunch of grants. And we probably make about 40 different grants to 40 different organizations, almost all of them right here. We do cover a larger area, but almost all of them are right here. So I would urge you to look through this list and see all of the different variety, huge variety, I think. That's one of the things that always strikes me, is that, it's from A to Z. It's all kinds of organizations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You are a very good public speaker. Keep it up.
40 years of teaching.
All right, anyone else on item 1, 8, or 9?
Hi there, my name is Lauren Wright. I'm the Executive Director of the Billings Community Foundation. I am here to ask for your support tonight for the BCF TIF application before you. But before I ever came to work for the Billings Community Foundation, I was involved in several other nonprofits, including the Wise Wonders Children's Museum, and also working with MSUB to get students out in the community. And so I did want to reiterate that I think it's incredibly important that we support our local downtown businesses and nonprofits that are doing their part to not only engage in our local community, but with our students, and who are bringing populations and safety for pedestrians and others in those downtown locations that would otherwise be empty. The foundation has been in this 404 North 30th Street building since about March, and during that time, we've done some significant renovations. As Bernie mentioned, when you just drive by the building, it's quite lovely. You can't tell that there is so much blight because most of it is under the foundation. It's under the parking lot. A lot of the things that we have encountered, we didn't realize were issues until we went to make some of these accessibility upgrades and scoped the sewers and started looking at how do we make upgrades to a historic building. It was built in 1882. It's one of the oldest residential homes in our community. But how do we make sure that we are making updates that allow it to be a permanent and important piece of our community moving forward, that historic value is recognized and allows for other organizations and generations to also enjoy this building. We are in the process of doing these renovations and of getting our building back open to the public. That's a very important thing for us because a lot of the programs that we are implementing not only benefit our favorite nonprofits, we're donating to those 90 different nonprofits listed there as well as the rest of that voucher list, but we do trainings for them. We meet with donors. We try to support our community in any way the community is asking for support from us. And right now we can't do that. We can't have people in the building because we don't have the infrastructure, the bathrooms to support them. We can't allow our other nonprofits to come in and to use our facility for their board meetings and their meetings with donors until we get those upgrades done. And so it is really important that we address not only the blight that you can see, but the blight that you can't see, so that we are taking those preventative measures to make sure that that building is sustainable for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right.
Hello, Council, and thank you. I'm also here to speak.
I'm sorry, I forgot to say your name and your address.
Got it. My name is Carolyn Severe, and I live at 221 South 29th Street on the south side. I'm on the Billings Community Foundation Board of Directors since January of this year, and since that time I've really been astounded at the organization. But what I really want to talk to you about is not so much the points that have been discussed, but last Friday when I was showing Councilmember Yakovich around our building, thank you for coming to that. What really struck me is the idea of when the blight is addressed, and if the blight is addressed now, then we can take preventative measures. We can put a stop to the degradation that is coming to the building, and it happens to belong to an organization that is community-minded and has the ability to leverage funds and support from the rest of the community for this structure. If it is not addressed right now, it will inevitably be more expensive, and at the point where the problems that have arisen have been shown, the building cannot be sold to another owner unless those problems are addressed. So at the point where it comes down to doing it now or later, it's not a question of doing it or not doing it, but when it happens. And if we do it now, it's less expensive, it's connected with an organization that is community-minded, and we can help the community in a way that simply would not be possible later. We don't want to come back to you or have any other organization or business have to come back to you 3 or 4 years from now asking for even more money or even to completely raise the building because it has gotten that bad. So that's just the point I wanted to bring up, but I really appreciate your consideration of the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Severe. Anyone else, public comment on items 1, 8, or 9? 1, 8, or 9. Please say your name and your address, please.
Hi, my name is Hannah Reno. I live at 2224 Azalea Lane. I'm on the appointment for the Housing Authority, or Homefront. I just wanted to make myself available in case you had any questions for me. Great,
Right.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you, thank you. All right, any other public comment? I see no other public comment. I'll close public comment. Council, I see that you have no extension over the, would anyone like to take anything off of the agenda? Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I need to abstain from 1M, 1 and 2.
Okay. 1M, 1 and 2, M1 and 2, okay? Okay, anyone else have separations? I see no, okay, I do.
I make a motion
Mr.
to approve the consent agenda with Councilmember Brown is abstaining, I'm sorry, with not approving M1 and 2 at this time.
Second, Councilperson Ronning. Okay, Councilperson Neese.
Thank you. I just want to make a note that...
Discussion.
Yeah, I just want to make a note that item number H, we're approving the, not having the mayoral and the judge election. The mayor is not here at this time, so he won't need to recuse himself to vote. So we just want to make a note that he's absent from this vote.
Okay, good. All right, any other discussion? Any other discussion? Any discussion? All right, all in favor of what Councilperson Neese and Councilperson Ronning second, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, passed unanimously. Okay, Mr. Neese?
I can make a motion to approve item 1M and 2 with Councilmember Brown abstaining.
I see second. Okay, Councilperson Ronning? Okay, any discussion on that? Yeah, Councilperson Ronning.
Thank you. Since Chief St. John is here, I do have a question for him. He doesn't actually know I'm going to ask this, but I didn't
Okay, and this
realize
is
he was
for
going to be
the
Bills,
bills,
yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Welcome, Chief St. John.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Council member?
Thank you. So it's one of the questions I've asked you before in email, but I saw him again. So, and it's one of the questions that Councilmember Purinton had brought up as well. So I see that there's more SANE exams that are in the bills and a number of those as well. I guess my question is, so is it my understanding that the cost of the exam when a victim is sexually assaulted or raped in the city of Billings, the cost of that exam comes out of the police department budget?
Yes, and some of it's reimbursed as well.
Okay, and where does that reimbursement come from?
State of Montana.
The state of Montana?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think that's some of the information that just gets lost on the public when we talk about public safety mill levy and things like that. That's one month we had 22 of them, 22 SANE exams that we were paying for. This month I think it's 6 or 8. But thank you so much.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Chief. All right, Councilperson Ronning, Purinton.
Thank you.
And that is regarding the bills.
Yes.
Okay, sure.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yes.
On 1M3, Chris, I just wanted to kind of have an update on what David Turch Associates, what they're working on. That's a lobbyist group out of DC. Is there anything particular? I think before they'd worked on the build grant. So is there anything in particular that we're asking?
Point of order.
Yeah, he's abstaining from these.
Oh, Mary.
Yes.
I think we already approved those.
That's true.
Yes, that's what I'm telling him.
So we're on item M1 and 2.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So your question?
So we passed 1 and 2, but we haven't passed 3.
No, we
right?
already did.
We did.
It's part of the consent agenda.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay. Okay, all right. Okay, all in favor of item M1 and 2 with Councilman Brown abstaining, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, none opposed. So we are now on item 2. Mayor, I'm passing the gavel back to you. Welcome. You're a hard-working mayor.
The consent agenda.
We tried to get through it all, and we did it.
Oh, is that what you did? It's okay. Well, thank you, everybody. I do apologize for being late. I was witness to a traffic accident that was probably said. And so the good news is I got a photo of the bad guy. Ooh. Yeah, so fast on the phone. Okay, thank you very much. I take it then you have concluded the consent agenda item number 1.
Regular agenda number 2.
Good timing. Thank you very much. Well, we'll move on then.
Thank you, the council.
Council, yes. Thank you very much. We'll move on then to the regular agenda, item number 2, public hearing and resolutions. Tony, would you read item number, we've got multiple subparts of 2. And so my understanding is the goal here is to conduct a single joint hearing on all of these assessments, but then have separate votes. It'd be like 10 different votes. But since the hearing will be on all 10 together, Tony, would you go ahead and read both the title, but also each subpart, identifying the letter of each subpart?
Item number 2. Public hearing and resolutions allocating assessments on the following. A, Park District 1, B, Park Maintenance Districts, C, Weed Assessments, D, SID 1416, E, SID 1417, F, SID 1418, G, SID 2916, and H, SID 2917.
My numbers get mixed up.
I'm missing.
I think you missed it.
I'm sorry, item J,
Okay.
SID 2918.
Thank you very much. Okay, and we have one presenter, I believe, on all of these. Is that correct? Or
That is correct.
Okay, so Andy, it's all yours.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Thank you, Tony. So we'll go through these again, one public hearing, 10 separate votes. These all, I think with the exception of weed assessments, are items that are related to the budget or previous council action. So I'm going to go through it quickly. Park District 1, based upon the discussion of the FY22 budget, we are requesting an assessment of 3% increase now that we have taxable value. We know what that assessment amount is 1.3875% of taxable value. This means for every $100,000 in assessed value, a homeowner would pay $18.73 or $40.72 for the median home. This should generate $3,090,000, which is consistent with the budget. The general obligation debt levy, again, since we have now received taxable value for the city, which increased 4.8%, we can officially set the mill levies for these debt payments because we need to collect a specific amount. And that total mill is 8.3 mills, which is down from 10.48 last year. The reason for the reduction is a combination of the increase in taxable value, but also the library bonds, if you recall, we refinanced at a lower rate, and we received the final payment, or final donation of the $3 million from the Billings Library Foundation, and so that it will be applied to the debt, and so we want to collect as much for tax revenue there. This total will be $24.36 for the median home. Park maintenance districts. Again, we have 36 park maintenance districts. Total assessments of all districts is $1.1 million. In the staff memo, it was broken apart by district. It's an overall net reduction of about $9,000 from FY21. There's 6,389 properties within a park maintenance district in the city of Billings. The average assessment of $181. Or a median of 124. The weed assessments, a total of 39 properties and a total amount of $8,600. Each year, I think there's been some questions about the formula that we use to, or that I guess code enforcement uses to set the assessed amount. And so I just wanted to put that up there just to make you aware. It's not just the cost of cutting the weeds, it's the cost plus an inspection fee plus 25% additional of the parks charge and a $25 penalty. This works out to a minimum charge of like $177. There's quite a few of those in that list. On this one, I'd ask that you authorize us to remove from the list there those that come and pay in full prior to us submitting this list to the Yellowstone County Treasurer's Office. There have been at least 2 that have done that, and they still have another week or so to do so. So that one, they do have the opportunity to come pay in full before it goes on their taxes. SID and work order improvements. All 6 of these pertain to action you've taken previously, creating the district. awarding the contract, selling the bonds, and now we are ready to spread the assessments. Each district, I guess up there, a very brief description of the project, and then also in that staff memo, there was a little bit more description of the location within the project. Here we are now spreading the cost and then have the interest rate that we were able to borrow at for those projects. And I believe that's it for the presentation, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions for Andy, Councilmember Bernice?
Thank you, Andy. On the library, where it's going down this year, and you had the donation, so next year, will it go up? Or is was that 3 million put towards the principal, so this 3.5 is?
Yep. Mayor, Council, Councilmember Bernice, it's a great question. So when the bonds were sold, the Library Foundation committed to donate $3 million in 10 $300,000 payments. So the bond structure was set that at the 11th year, the payments actually go down by $300,000. That way we wouldn't see a spike in or in number of mills. So you're actually seeing some of that reduction because of the debt service going down as well. So there wasn't a $3 million check. It was the final $300,000 check that we received, and it's all applied towards principal, if that makes sense.
So just to confirm, future years, it's 3.5 mils this year. Next year, it'll be probably a bit less and going on.
Correct, yeah. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Andy? Andy, the interest rate, just out of curiosity, on Annafeld was quite a bit higher than the 3.69 or 3.6 on all the others. What explains for that?
I'm sorry, Mayor.
Just the interest rate on the Annafeld project was 4.55, I believe, so almost a full percent higher.
Yep, Mayor, Council. That was because that one actually was not tax exempt, so we had to issue that one as a taxable bond. We will possibly refinance that in the future for a tax exempt bond. It's because we issued, when we refinanced the library bonds, we issued over $10 million in bonds. And so when we did that to get a good rate at that time, we entered into, or we issued those bank qualified is what that means, which means anything over 10 million we cannot issue as tax exempt. So that one's taxable. It's also very large, 2.6 million compared to the other ones. So at the time, it was the best rate we could get with FIB. But I would anticipate that one getting refinanced in the future.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, Councilmember Bernice?
Thank you, Mayor. Regard to the fees for the weed abatement for I think code enforcement, Nicole, do you increase those fee amounts periodically, and if so, when's the last time it was increased?
The fee amounts for the cost of removal are set by parks. We have not increased those. They have not requested an increase from that. The other amounts, the $40 inspector fee, the 25% administrative charge, and the penalties are all set within the ordinance. And we have not updated that ordinance in probably 8 years. Okay. So in order to change those fees, we'd have to amend the ordinance.
Okay, thank you. I would appreciate if maybe we can get sometime down the road an amendment to the ordinances just to modify those fees as the costs go up. We look into that. Thank you.
Right. Or we could take them out of the ordinance and you could set the fees by resolution.
That probably would be a better way to fix the ordinance. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. Andy, I understand that Park District 1 is through the legislature will sunset in a year, 2 years, or 3 years, something like that. Well, does that affect the park maintenance districts, or are they totally separate?
Mayor, Council, Councilmember Boyette, park maintenance districts are a separate section of statute explicitly for park maintenance districts. So the 13-year automatic requirement to revote a district doesn't apply to park maintenance districts, street maintenance districts. Actually, for the city of Billings, it only applies to our Park District 1. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions before we go to a public hearing on all of these assessment items? Don't see any, so we'll open it up for public hearing. If you would like to comment on any of the items under item 2, these series of assessments and the roughly 10 different subsections, this is your opportunity. Please come forward. So you keep your comments to 3 minutes and tell us your name and address. Any public comment on item 2? Don't see any. We'll close the public hearing on item number 2. Come back to council. Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you. Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken public testimony.
I'm sorry, I just want to make sure it's only dealing with item 2A.
Yes, I'm
Thank
only
you.
dealing with item 2A. I move to approve a resolution assessing Park District 1 as recommended by staff.
Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Chiriqui. Motion is for approval, consistent with the staff recommendation. Discussion on the motion. If not, discussion, Councilmember Bernice.
Thank you. I won't approve I won't support this motion. However, I understand the 3%. So I think there was some discussion quite a while ago about how $1 million of the general funds was moved into Park District 1 to balance the budget. I still don't support that, so I'll be voting no on this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others, Councilmember Purington?
Well, that was one of the questions I was going to ask. I think part of that discussion was in the budget hearings, and so didn't we say that there was some discussion whether or not that $1 million to make it $3 million went forward? It wasn't, we have to vote every year for the $1 million.
Councilmember Purington, Mayor and Council, no. The first time that I ever recall that question coming up was during this budget year.
Correct.
In order to do that, you would have to go back and not cut the budget by $1 million. You don't have the authority to gain back that levy through the general fund. You only have Park District 1 to use. So you either need to have Park District 1 bring in this amount of revenue, $3,090,000, or cut $1 million of expenses in order to have revenues and expenditures balance each other.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll proceed to a vote. Again, the motion is for approval consistent with the staff recommendation. If voting in favor, please say aye. Aye. If voting in opposition, say nay.
Nay.
I heard 2 nays from Councilmembers Neese and Purington, and all other votes in favor. Item 2B, is there any further discussion or motion? Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve resolution assessing general obligation debt mill levy rates as recommended by staff for number 2B.
Thank you. Second, Councilmember Purington. Discussion on the motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Councilmember Neese.
I request that the library bond be separated from this vote. For a separate vote.
Not quite sure procedurally how that works, but maybe you could provide a little background for the reason for this idea.
I brought this up last year when we were doing this. The charter states that we can only have 5 mills for the library, which we already assessed. This is going to be 3.5 mills, and I'm requesting separation just to vote no on the library bond. I know it'll probably pass, but I believe the charter in this does not coincide, and we haven't fixed the charter yet to get that. So so I'm asking it to be separate. I think I have the right to ask for an item that is distinct and separate to be separated. It's a simple no vote on this is what I'm asking for. You can amend the motion to remove the library, or I guess I can amend the motion to remove the library bond for a separate vote.
Okay, and just by way of background, since we haven't received anything in writing on this, but I'm looking at section 1.04 for the rest of the council of their charter says mill levy for library. I assume this is what you're referring to, Council.
Correct.
Member. It says, quote, in addition to the mill levies authorized by subsections 1.02 and 1.03 of Article 1, the City Council may levy not more than 5 mills for the purpose of providing funds for the operation, maintenance, and capital needs of the Parmalee Library only. And then this concept of separation, yeah, is that in a?
That's in an ordinance.
In an ordinance? And
Yeah, and I'm not really, I mean, I know this is a lot of, I've talked to the legal staff about this before. We can rehash this over discussions if you want, but I think if we just go through a simple vote, I'm satisfied with that. I'm not trying to sway anyone's opinion here.
I'll second that, just so we can move forward.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second to have a separate vote on all parts other than the library assessment, I guess, and then a separate vote on the library. Staff, anybody want to comment on, procedurally, does that cause us any troubles?
So, Mayor and Council, I don't see any procedural issue there. Just to offer clarity in case someone's listening in confusion from a lay perspective, it's not the legal, the charter has a series of levies. Only the voters can go above those levies, and in this case, the voters approved the bond to build a library. So that's what this vote is about. No problem separating the vote, some of you voting yes or no on it. Although if you ultimately, a majority of you voted no, we would have some serious issues relative to our debt and those who lent us money to build the library. So I would just like the record to be clear. We don't believe unequivocally there's any legal problem with the voters' authority to sell bonds and build the library, which is in addition to the 5 mills that the charter identifies, but only the voters could authorize that. Thank you.
Okay, so there is, I guess, a motion to make that separation. And that is, I guess, what we'll now vote on, that procedural motion. I don't see any great need for discussion unless other members of the council do. Gina, before we go to a vote on that procedural question, did you want to comment at all on the procedure that we're looking at here?
No, I think that procedure that's acceptable. There's nothing legal, there's no legal issue with that.
Okay, so we'll move to that vote. Is there any discussion? I don't want to close off discussion. Is there any discussion on that procedural motion before the council? Okay, I'm sorry, Councilmember Joy.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that I understand that if this vote, without the vote for separation, this is to pay the GO debt for the library. This is not anything to do with the mills that are set in the charter. So as I understand this is about repaying the debt. So I will vote against the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion, I will vote because I don't see the point of where we're going. The charter clearly says creates a 5 mil cap. We're well below that, so I don't quite see the point. Further discussion on the motion. If not, we'll move to a vote on the procedural motion, not the underlying one. If in favor of having those two separate votes, please say aye.
Aye.
I heard Councilmember Neese and Yakowicz. If voting in opposition, please say nay.
Nay.
Nays have it, so it's still a package. We'll proceed to the underlying motion that was already made by Councilmembers Poyet, seconded by Councilmember Purington for approval of item 2B, the general obligation debt, as a package. It would include the library component. Discussion on that underlying motion. Is there any discussion on that motion? Don't see any. We'll move to a vote. If in favor of that motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay.
Nay.
The motion passes with the exception of Councilmember Neese, who votes no. Item 2C, Councilmember Yakowicz.
Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve a resolution assessing the park maintenance districts as recommended by staff.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Yakowicz, second by Councilmember Neese. Discussion on that motion. Any discussion? Item 2C, we'll proceed to a vote then. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Item 2D, Councilmember Neese.
Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve the resolution assessing weed assessments as recommended by staff, including removing those assessments that were paid before they were put on taxes.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Joy. Okay, discussion on the motion.
Your Honor.
Councilmember Yakovich.
Quickly, I want to reinforce what Councilperson Neese mentioned, that we can address that through resolution. I think it's a great idea, and I want to thank code enforcement for working in that area, because that is another causes blight and impacts neighborhoods when it's allowed to just get out of control. So thank you, Nicole, and code enforcement for your constant vigilance on that.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? Okay, we'll move ahead then on a vote. Again, the motion is for approval with the staff recommendation, but also the additional clarification that staff is directed to remove any items where payment has been made, I think roughly in the next week or whatever the deadline is. If in favor of that motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. Item 2E, SID 1416. Is there a motion? Councilmember Ronning.
Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve a resolution assessing SID 1416 as recommended by staff.
Second. Second by Councilmember Neese. Discussion on the motion. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Item 2F, SID 1417. Councilmember Neese.
Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve a resolution assessing the SID 1417 as recommended by staff.
Is there a second? Councilmember Boyette. Motion is for approval. Any discussion? Seeing none, if in favor of the motion for approval, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Item 2G, SID 1418. Is there a motion? Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you. Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve a resolution assessing the SID 1418 as recommended by staff.
For a second, Councilmember Neese. Discussion on the motion. Any discussion? Don't see any. Move to the vote. If in favor of approval, item 2G, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Item 2H, motion, Councilmember Neese.
Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve a resolution assessing SID 2916 as recommended by staff.
Is there a second? Councilmember Boyette. Any discussion? Seeing none. If in favor, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. I voted in the affirmative. Item 2I, SID 2917. Councilmember Neese.
Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve resolution assessing SID 2917 as recommended by staff.
Second, Councilmember Purington. Any discussion? Seeing none, if in favor of item 2I, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Brings us then to our final item of under 2, item 2J, SID 2918. Is there a motion? Councilmember Boyette.
Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve resolution assessing SID 2918 as recommended by staff.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Neese. Any discussion? Seeing none, if in favor, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Brings us item number 3. Tony, would you read item number 3?
Item number 3, public hearing and resolution revising and assessing encroachment rental fees for FY 2022. Staff recommends approval. Action, approval, or disapproval of staff recommendation.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. we have no changes in the methodology that we're using for encroachment fees this year, so this will be quick. Maybe. It does not work. There we go. All right, first, just a quick reminder that an encroachment is any private structure that is placed in the right-of-way. We do have a permit process for encroachments, and a permit fee is collected at that time of application to cover the cost of the application. If an encroachment is allowed, a permit will be issued, and then that triggers an annual assessment for the rental of the right-of-way. And it's that annual fee that is the subject of the resolution tonight. There are two reasons we assess an annual rental fee. The first is to cover costs of inspection, administration, and ongoing right-of-way management costs, including investigation of complaints, increased maintenance costs for some structures in the right-of-way, as well as increased construction costs for underground conduit. The other reason that we assess a rental fee is because Public Works is responsible for ensuring the safety and accessibility of the right-of-way. And the right-of-way is dedicated primarily for the movement of pedestrians and traffic. So if we did not charge a rental fee, there would not be a deterrent and there'd be more structures in the right-of-way. The rental fee was set at $1 per square foot way back in 1985, and it stayed that way until last year, where it increased to $2 per square foot. There was also a resolution back in 1986 that exempted all awnings and canopy encroachments in the central business district, and that resolution is still in place today. Last year, we also implemented a change in methodology where we implemented a two-tier rate structure. And that first tier is for encroachments that have very minimal impact to the right-of-way and can include, for example, awnings, overhanging signs, and underground conduit. And then the tier 2 encroachments have a major impact to the right-of-way, and they cause part of the right-of-way to be unusable. Some examples of these are restaurant patios that are on the sidewalk, fences, stairs, and sheds in the right-of-way. Last year was also the first year of a 5-year plan to increase those tier 2 encroachments to a rate that is equal to 50% of the average taxable value of the adjacent land. Right now, that value is $7.28. So for this year, we are recommending no increase in those tier 1 encroachments as we are covering costs, and we're also recommending no increase in the minimum annual fee for encroachments, which is currently $10 per encroachment. The recommendation for tier 2 for this second year of the 5-year plan is to increase the rate from $2 to $2.80 per square or linear feet. So that's an 80-cent per square foot increase. And we do have 131 encroachments that we are assessing to 162 tax codes that will bring in about $65,000 in annual revenues for FY22. This is an increase of about $12,000 over FY21 numbers. The table at the bottom shows 5 different encroachments that we have and just the FY21 assessment and FY22 assessment amounts. Obviously, the tier 1 encroachments have zero increase, zero impact there. And then the other tier 2 increases are about 40% is what that 80 cents is. So the dollar amount all depends on the size of the encroachment. So if you have an encroachment such as that shed on Rimrock Lane, it would increase from $40 to $56, an increase of $16. But an encroachment with a larger footprint, such as that outdoor patio on North 28th, has a $400 increase for FY22. So the resolution tonight needs to be approved, well, either tonight or on the September 27th meeting in order to get on the property taxes for this year. We have the resolution that both revises the fees and assesses them to property owners. And then council, of course, has the opportunity to either approve the fees as recommended and assess to property owners, or revise the fees and assess those to property owners.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Questions for Jennifer? Councilmember Shaw, Ronning, Purington? Or I'm sorry, Brown. I looked at one end. Yeah. I got the
Boy, that's,
Shaw.
wow. We're twins.
I was thinking Sean.
Jennifer, the increase, do we have an added cost? Is that why we're increasing that?
Councilmember Brown, we do not have added costs necessarily this year. It was proposed by council in, I think, 2 years ago to increase those fees. So the $2 is what actually covers our costs of these encroachments. The remaining is more of a deterrent, and because it is a rental. So those like the patio sidewalk restaurants, they make a lot of money by just expanding outwards. And what that does is, of course, makes our right-of-way unusable. So they're kind of paying for the value of that. And that is why we're trying to get it up to about 50% of the taxable market value.
Okay. I didn't agree with it then, and I don't now, so, okay.
Thank you. Councilmember Ronning?
Thank you.
Jennifer, thank you. A question about the awnings. So if I understood the slide, it's might be one or two back. There we go. Okay, so if I understand the awnings and canopies in the Central Business District, those are exempted. But for the entire rest of the city, awnings and canopies have a rental cost?
Councilmember Ronning, that is correct. If you're not in the Central Business District, they're charged an encroachment fee.
Okay, so when you stated that this encroachment fee is for the purposes of pedestrian and vehicle traffic, can you explain to me how awnings and canopies fit in with that?
Councilmember Ronning, the biggest thing would be if there was any kind of construction in the area. I think there are very few canopies outside of the Central Business District, and I'd have to look at the list to see if we're actually even assessing any. I can't think of any businesses offhand outside the Central Business District that have them.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Purington.
Thank you. So, and these were both my questions too. To increase 40% of taxable value, because it is, the assumption that these businesses are making money, so we need a cut of that. I don't particularly agree with that at all. We need to support our local businesses and not just keep taxing them or assessing them. It's the same for them. So I'm not for that 40% increase. And also, I guess I have never understood why we treat the Central Business District different than the rest of Billings. And so with Penny's question, I would also look at, canopy and awnings. I would think there'd be more of an issue in the downtown because it's closer to the roads. So I'm not sure that I would exempt those in the Central Business District any more so than I would the rest of Billings. So if you could comment on those two things.
Councilmember Purington, I'm not really sure why back in 1986 they exempted the Central Business District, other than that is where I think all the awnings were at that time. And it just did not have a big enough impact to the right-of-way that they wanted to charge a rental fee for it.
Thank you, Councilmembers Shaw or Brown, whatever your name is on this end, and Neese.
Thank you. Okay, so Jennifer, I look at this and I think, okay, 85, I mean, it's been a long time that this has not been changed. So to me, I look at this as not trying to penalize businesses in any way, but as the city just trying to keep up with what the rate should have been. Do you have, off the top of your head, comparisons for any other Montana cities and what they do or what they charge for these?
Councilmember Shaw, we looked at it last year, and it kind of ran the gamut. There's a lot of people that went most entities were going to this tier type structure because there is definitely more impact from these tier 2 encroachments. So most cities charge more for structures that are actually impacting the ability to use the right of way. The rates of $7.28 was somewhere in the middle of what we were seeing.
Back there somewhere?
Whose fault is that?
Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. Jennifer, thank you for this, and you're right. Last year we did go through this, and I thought you did a really good job of coming up with a plan. The compromise, I think I wanted quite a bit more, but I think the plan that you guys and the research that you did showed that this was a good way for the city to catch up. I did have a question on the $10 fee. Is that still covering the cost for the process? And if you find next year that, the time involved and stuff like that, would that be increased to $11 or $12, whatever it takes to increase that cost?
Councilmember Neese, yes, we did look at that this year. It is covering costs, kind of barely covering costs, so next year we'd probably increase it.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other discussion before we go to public hearing on this item? Okay. Jennifer, thank you very much. We'll go to a public hearing. Before we do, I'll just comment that if we get to the point of a motion in favor of the staff recommendation, which is the standard language on our agenda, just a reminder to council what the staff's recommendation is at this point. Item on paragraph 5, council or staff revised paragraph 5 of the proposed ordinance at the end of the week. I had just pointed out in an email that that notice language was written in the future tense to say that the matter will be considered on an agenda. The clerk should publish, i.e. in the future, notice, and the council will hold a hearing. Obviously, that needed to be revised, and so it has been revised, and now is in the past tense. The council has considered this, the council has held a public hearing, and the clerk has published notice. So that change has been made in paragraph 5 and distributed, and that is the staff's recommendation at this point. Okay, with that, a little clarification. Is there any public comment on item number 4? I'm sorry, item number 3, the tier structure on the encroachment fees. If you'd like to comment, please come forward. Item number 3, is there any public comment? Don't see any, so we will close it. Councilmember Yakovich.
Thank you, Honored Council. Having conducted a public hearing, consider written and spoken testimony, I move to approve the resolution revising and assessing encroachment rental fees for fiscal year 2022 as recommended by staff.
Second.
Thank you. Councilmember Neese had a second. Discussion on the motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Not? Okay, Councilmember Brown.
I'm not going to support this simply because we have no added cost for any of these, and we're increasing it by 40%. That just doesn't seem right to me, so I won't be supporting this.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion? Councilmember Purinton.
So, Sean, I'm wondering if there could be an amendment to the motion for taking off that 40%. That you would support something like that.
Yeah.
So I guess that's where I would go. I'm not sure exactly how to word it, but on the tier 2 is that I would not like to see that or to remove the 40% increase this year. I don't know that there's another way to increase it other than the 40%, but at this point I think the motion would be that we would not increase the 40% in tier 2.
So the motion is to not make any change to what you see there on tier 1, but the tier 2 cost would be a flat $2 as it was last year and would not increase to the $2.80. That is the motion. Is there a second? Councilmember Brown has the second. That's an amendment or proposed amendment to the underlying motion. So discussion now on the proposed amendment. Councilmember Neese.
Jennifer, if we were to just deny the first motion, wouldn't that just basically leave it the same and that we wouldn't change the rates? I think that's what you're asking for, is not to change the rate. So if we were to had voted to increase it or decrease it, this would, by voting in favor of this, is the same thing.
Councilmember Neese, it would not increase the rates, as you're saying, but it would not assess them to property owners. So we would need to have an amended motion to keep the rates at the same level as before.
Okay.
Okay, discussion, Councilmember Purington.
Well, and just to follow up on that, we did increase the rate last year. We increased it from $1 to $2. Is that correct, Jennifer? So it has been increased.
Councilmember Purington, yes, it was increased last year. The plan last year, of course, was that was the first year of the 5-year plan.
Right.
My only comment was we need something to pass tonight. It can be a 0% increase, but also assessing to property owners.
And so most of those businesses in the Tier 2 are larger, so you are still going to get, like right now on North 28th, their assessment is $1,000. So if we continued on, it would still be another $1,000, correct?
Councilmember Purington, as long as a resolution is passed, yes, they would be charged $1,000.
So one follow-up, Mr. Mayor.
Please.
So if I remember right, this past year, and Nicole, I don't know, you could probably address this as well, but we had made an adjustment with COVID. I think it was last spring, last summer. Maybe it was this summer. I don't know. I'm confused now where we are. But we had allowed people to use, if they had patio space, I don't know that it was in the right-of-way, but they were allowed to have an outdoor patio. Would this have affected those people? Were they charged additionally if they wanted to do that?
Councilmember Purington, the one that I know of is in front of Sassy Biscuit, where they were approved for a pedlet, and the Downtown Business Association agreed to pay that encroachment cost. They did not expand though, so there was no charge to them for this last year.
So they would have paid an encroachment fee if people had taken advantage of that opportunity, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, further discussion on the amendment. Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I won't be supporting the amended motion. As you can see, it also includes a fence in the alleyway. And we have very long discussions very often when there's an infill project and we have a very messy arrangement where it's not clear if it's an alley, if it's a street, it's a pathway. Considering that at some point the city will want to move forward with some sort of improvement in that area, and there's a fence down the alleyway, this is an important way that we can signal to property owners that, yes, we want an orderly, uniform city. When we move forward to redevelop things, we'd like not to have someone been using an alleyway for a fence for however many years for a fee of only $30. If that increases to $42, maybe at some point, considering the price of fencing, $42 is probably a pretty good price, because I heard it's very expensive to move fences. So we're only charging them $42 to essentially make our city less orderly. The same with the sidewalk. That's increased footprint for a business. I think that this is a way in which the city says, we understand that you're using our property, you just don't get it for free. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion before we proceed to a vote? Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't support the motion. I think the staff did a lot of work in coming up with a 5-year plan, and I still support that plan. So I'll vote no on this one, and hopefully we can vote yes on the next one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move to a vote then. The motion is, or I'm sorry, the vote will just be on the amendment, which is to enact the assessments, but to change the Tier 2 arrangement back to what it is now, $2 per square foot instead of the $2.80. So if in favor of that amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Voting in favor of the amendment, Councilmember Brown and Purington and Councilmember Boyette. If voting in opposition, please say nay. All other council members voted in opposition. Motion fails. Back to the underlying motion by Councilmember Purington, by Councilmember Yakowicz and Neese for approval consistent with the staff recommendation. Further discussion on the underlying motion. Any further discussion? If not, we'll proceed to a vote on that. If in favor of the underlying original motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Council members Brown and Purington voted nay. I believe all other council members voted in favor, so motion passes. Thank you very much. That concludes item 3, brings us to item 4. Tony, would you read item number 4?
Item number 4, public hearing and second final reading ordinance for zone change 994, a zone change from residential rural to suburban neighborhood residential located at 2930 US Highway 3. John and Patricia Berg, owners. Zoning Commission recommends approval and adoption of the 10 criteria. Action, approval, or disapproval of the Zoning Commission recommendation.
Good evening,
Nicole.
Mayor and Council. I will be very efficient with my presentation. This is just to remind you of what you did on August 23rd last month. On each of these 4 zone change items, this is the first one. So here's the subject property. It was outside the city limits. You annexed it and zoned it. On August 23rd, a second reading is required. Here's the subject property. It is 2 lots together. There's no plans to develop on the vacant lot. It's just part of the main parcel. The Zoning Commission did recommend approval to you and those findings of the 10 criteria for the zone change. It is compatible with the surrounding zoning and will allow this property owner to come into the city limits. And I'd be happy to take any of your questions.
Any questions for Nicole? Okay, Councilmember Purington.
Having conducted 2 public hearings.
Councilmember Purington, we have to have a public hearing, but we appreciate your.
Thank you. I'm just ready to
appreciate
go.
your willingness to keep us moving. We will open up for public hearing then. If you'd like to comment on zone change 994, which is item number 4, that is the property on US Highway 3, Patricia Berg and John Berg, owners. Please come forward. Is there any public comment on item number 4? Don't see any. Public hearing is closed. Then item number 4 now. Councilmember Purington.
Thank you. Having conducted 2 public hearings, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve the second reading for zone change 994 and adopt the findings of the 10 criteria as approved by the City Council on first reading on August 23rd, 2021.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Boyette indicated a second there, so we will move to discussion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any discussion on the motion?
Arguing over here. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Don't see any, so we'll proceed to a vote. If in favor of the motion for approval, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Takes us to item number 5. Back to Nicole.
Item number 5.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Public hearing
Tony, please read it.
and second final reading ordinance for zone change 995, a zone change from rural residential 1 and public 1 to suburban neighborhood residential, located on the east side of Bitterroot Drive, north of Cherry Creek Loop. Cherry Island LLC owner, Sanderson Stewart agent. Zoning Commission recommends approval and adoption of the findings of the 10 criteria. Action, approval, or disapproval of Zoning Commission recommendation.
Again, this is a second reading, public hearing. Here is the subject property, partially outside the city limits until you annexed it on August 23rd, now all within the city limits. Here is the proposed zoning of that neighborhood 3. Public 1 zoning will remain for the south end of Cherry Creek Loop and the path there. Here is an aerial photograph. Again, you voted to approve this zoning request on August 23rd, annex the property based on the Zoning Commission's recommendation of approval and their findings of the 10 criteria, and I'll take any questions.
Are there any questions for Nicole? Don't see any. Thank you. We'll just move immediately to public hearing then. If anybody would like to comment on zone change 995, this is Cherry Creek Loop property, please come forward at this time. Is there any public comment on item number 5, Cherry Creek zone change 995? No one is coming forward. We'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Neese.
Having conducted 2 public hearings, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve and adopt the findings of the 10 criteria of zone change 995 as approved by the City Council on the first reading, August 23rd, 2021.
Second by Councilmember Yakowicz. Discussion. Is there any discussion on the motion? The motion is for approval. Item number 5, any discussion? Don't see any discussion by the council, so we will move to a vote. If in favor of the motion, which is for approval, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Tony, would you read item number 6?
Item number 6, public hearing and second final reading ordinance for zone change 996, a zone change from corridor mixed use 2 and mixed residential 2 to neighborhood office and mid-century neighborhood residential, generally located on Elysian Road, Dodger Lane, and Interstate Avenue. Harmony Meadows LLC owner, performance engineering agent. Zoning Commission recommends approval and adoption of the 10 criteria. Action, approval, or disapproval of the Zoning Commission recommendation.
Good evening again. This is the 3rd zone change that you considered on August 23rd and approved. This is for Harmony Meadows, which is in Ward 3, south of the interstate along Elysian Road. This shows the existing zoning. This is already within the city limits, so it was not annexed on the 23rd. This is the new zoning proposed at neighborhood 2 or mid-century neighborhood and neighborhood office along the frontage lots for Elysian Road. Here's an aerial of the property. And the Zoning Commission is recommending approval and adoption of the findings of their 10 criteria. It meets our growth policy and allows this developer to adjust to new market conditions. I'd be happy to take any of your questions.
Any questions for Nicole? Don't see any. Thank you. Again, this will open for public hearing. This is the public hearing opportunity for your comment on second reading zone change 996, item number 6. Harmony Meadows in Ward 3. Is there any public comment on item number 6? Is there any public comment on item number 6? Do not see any, so we will close the public hearing and back to council. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councilmember Joy.
Having conducted 2 public hearings, considered written and spoken testimony, I move to approve the second reading of zone change 996 and adopt the findings of the 10 criteria as recommended by the City Council on the first reading, August 23rd, 2021.
Second by Councilmember Chiriky. Discussion by council. Is there any discussion on item number 6? Now we'll proceed to a vote. If in favor of the motion for approval, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Brings us to item number 7. Tony, would you read item number 7?
Item number 7, public hearing and second final reading ordinance for zone change 997, a zone change from agriculture to mixed-use planned neighborhood development located at the intersection of King Avenue West and 48th Street West. Thomas and Mary Dyke Trust owner, performance engineering agent. Zoning Commission recommends approval and adoption of the 10 criteria. Action, approval, or disapproval of the Zoning Commission recommendation.
Nicole.
Okay. Last public hearing. This is the first planned neighborhood development the City Council considered. This is at 48th Street West and King Avenue West on the bleeding edge of the city. This is the proposed zoning mix in that planned neighborhood development, which includes corridor mixed use 1, mixed residential 2, mid-century neighborhood N2, and public 1 zoning. Here's an aerial of the property. This is the unique one that had that small in-holding property that is now surrounded by city limits. I'd be happy to take any of your questions.
Any questions for Nicole? Councilmember Boyette?
I think, Nicole, last time you said this was our very first one of these,
Yes?
and you said you were going to be out there with your hard hat on, watching. Will you be able to report back to the council maybe in the future how the first one worked out, I guess, is really more important.
Well, as you know, will be a phased annexation, so they'll be coming back to you when that second phase comes through, and that'll be a good opportunity for us to report on that first phase. But you'll have a new planned neighborhood development on September 27th.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for Nicole? Don't see any. We'll go to a public hearing. If you would like to comment on item number 7, the planned development at King Avenue and 48th Street, please come forward. Is there any public comment on item number 7? No one is coming forward, so we will close the public hearing and back to council. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councilmember Boyette.
Having conducted 2 public hearings, considered written and spoken public testimony, I move to approve the second reading of Zone Change 997 and adopt the findings of the 10 criteria as approved by the City Council on the first reading, August 23rd, 2021.
Thank you. Councilmember Brown is making a peace sign, so he has the second. Discussion on the motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Don't see any, so we'll proceed to a vote. If in favor of approval, consistent with the staff recommendation, item number 7, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes. Number 8, Tony, would you read item number 8?
Item number 8, tax increment finance assistance from Downtown Urban Renewal District to Billings Community Foundation for renovation at 404 North 30th Street, $98,518. Downtown Billings Partnership Board, DBP, recommends approval. Action, approval or disapproval of DBP Board recommendation.
Looks like our presenter is Mehmet Casey tonight.
Yes.
Mehmet.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you, Mehmet Casey with the Downtown Billings Partnership. And tonight I'm presenting a tax increment financing project. If you're experiencing deja vu, we have looked at this first iteration in July, and per our standard follow-up with the applicant and the city staff and the partnership board, consensus was that we would revise it and take it back to council for reconsideration. So a quick sort of summary of what was covered in the past, but the foundation has been in operation since 2007. It's a philanthropic organization serving over 90 local charitable organizations in the Billings area in Yellowstone County. Not only through grants and fundraising, but also providing workshops, establishing endowments, managing donor and corporate advised funds, creating community funds, and assisting clients who utilize the Montana Charitable Income Tax Credit. This is a quick sort of snapshot of some of the organizations that you'll probably see in the community that are recipients of funds and awards, as well as clients of the foundation. Of course, that's not all of them. The list extends over 3 pages. It's available on their website. But again, this is just a quick snapshot of a few in the community. This is the extent of the project we're looking at in terms of the qualified expenses that a request is being asked for. The layout that you'll see here is of the building. In the upper left corner, that light blue area, that's the proposed ADA restroom that's going to be. This is a picture of it too. What you see in it right now, it's a utility room. So this is being relocated to this adjacent space here under the main stairs that go up to the second floor. And then in here on this side, the yellow line is the ramp that will be installed for ADA accessibility into the space. And then here there is a secondary set of stairs that goes up to the second floor. That will be removed, and a lift will be installed instead. The green lines here are the doors that lead to the outside or exterior doors. This particular door right here is ADA compliant, so clients can go in here and access this ramp if they need to go upstairs, or access the restroom if they need that. Additionally, outside there will be two ADA compliant parking spots right here so that they can access that door as well. And here is another picture of that secondary set of stairs that will become the lift. This is a picture of the current sewer line under the foundation and the crawl space. This cannot be worked on or enhanced as is because it could compromise or damage the northwest foundation of the building. So as a result, what is going to be happening is that this line will be capped and abandoned, and a new line will be installed to get into the building. And so the next picture will show more details on what that looks like. So here, this yellow line will be the new sewer line in the parking lot, and this is a picture of what the parking lot looks like. And then this is where the new ADA compliant parking spots will be, which again leads back into the building at the appropriate door. Per also the CPTED, the Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design Evaluation, after the construction and excavation is done, the whole parking lot will be resurfaced, which allows the foundation to restripe and hence the relocation of the ADA compliant parking spots. The eligible improvements that we're looking at tonight for your consideration are the 4 categories, 3 of which are related to the ADA access. One is the restroom, as well as some structural repairs, and then one is the demolition of the stairs to create the space for the lift, and then the other will be the construction of the lift shaft for the lift to go up, and then the other one is the sewer repair to the line itself, or the addition of the new line. So with that, the board supports these improvements because they address safety concerns of not just the building and the surrounding area, but also a safe operation within the building and the accessibility concern into the building and out of the building, and the longevity, the overall longevity of the building. The board also found that these qualified expenses do comply with the city's TIF policy, the urban renewal plan, the DBA strategic plan, and the Montana Code annotated. And with that, the partnership recommends approval of this new award, which is again the total of the 4 items, and assuming the rest occurs, which is the developer signing the agreement and that available funds are available. And I'll open it up to questions, comments, concerns. And I do have again the applicant with me if you have additional questions for them about either the project or the operation.
I'm going to just turn it over to Lauren Wright, the Executive Director, in case she wants to add anything, and then we'll open up for questions for both of you. So, Lauren, if you had anything.
I'd just like to thank you guys for letting us come back to council. Obviously, this is a reduced ask from the last time we were before you, but these are some of the most pressing things that need to be addressed and that are TIF qualifiable so that we can get that building open to the public and get the foundation's programs up and running again. Not only is it important for our own organization, but we definitely feel that having a larger presence at the building, being able to have traffic from individuals who are coming to the building, from our nonprofit partners who are coming for trainings, the additional traffic that having those 2 new ADA compliant handicap spaces will make, will allow that building and the area that we're in to be safer for pedestrians as well as visitors.
Thank you. And Mehmet, just to remind us, this is about approximately half of what the previous request was. Is that correct?
Yeah, roughly pared down to that. The initial ask was 181 and 774.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Yakovich?
I move to approve tax increment finance assistance from Downtown Urban Renewal District to Billings Community Foundation for renovation 404 North 30th Street in amount of $98,518 as recommended by DBA Board.
Second.
Motion made, seconded by Councilmember Shaw. Discussion or questions for the applicants? Is there any motion or I'm sorry, discussion or questions? Councilmember Ronnie?
Thank you so much for coming back. I'm sorry that you have to come back a second time, but I'm very glad you stayed persistent. I supported you the first time. I support you this time. I appreciate the additional material that you sent us, and if I'm looking at this picture correctly, it seems to me there's an individual there smoking meth.
So that is last Friday morning. I came to the building and that individual was apparently sleeping in the area next to our garbage cans, and he was indeed smoking meth. You can zoom in on that picture on my phone where I took it and see the meth pipe that he's smoking from. I sort of feel like I should reiterate that currently the foundation is staffed by all women, and so part of our previous ask was for some security upgrades as well. Of course, that's not included here, but as I mentioned, the 2 ADA parking spots are going to be right next to where that individual was sitting, and we do feel like the increased presence of traffic and of people will help to mitigate that situation. I happened to have my dogs with me that day, and so we took a little walk around the block and asked that individual to skedaddle because we were opening to the public, and he was very kind to clean up and to be on his way. But it was hard to come to that at 9 o'clock in the morning and realize that I was there by myself and that there wasn't necessarily anybody I could call.
Thank you. I guess the point I was going to make to that is you're right across the street from
the
Lincoln Center, where there are children that attend school there. And once again, I will absolutely support this because I think having more traffic and more foot traffic going in and out of that will definitely remove that as well. So thank you, Lauren.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilmember Tricky?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I'd like to amend the motion to change the number from $98,515 to $150,000.
Okay, motion speaks for itself. Is there a second? Councilmember Joy. Okay, motion made and seconded. Discussion now, I guess, on that amendment. Councilmember Brown and Ronning.
I don't really have a problem with that if we were back to the original ask, but that's not what they're asking for here. So, if those items were included, I don't think I would have a problem supporting it, but I won't support it without those items included.
None of the items from the original application that we submitted last month have been completed or finished or even started on. So we would be more than happy to supply those numbers and have the allocation as it was previously at that $150,000 mark.
Okay, Councilmember Ronning.
Thank you. I guess I was going to ask, and Lauren kind of answered the question, but I was going to ask Councilmember Tricky, was there, I support it, but I guess for clarification, what was the additional money going to be for in your motion?
They're going to try and pull that up for you so that you can see what the original ask was and how that was allocated.
I was originally going to just return to the original motion, the original ask, but decided to compromise slightly and try to split the difference. I'm happy to withdraw that motion and go back to the original ask if that's easier.
Councilmember Tricky, so the question though was if the amount were increased to 150, exactly what would be included? Is that in your motion? Or
can I clarify my ask? Can I clarify my question?
Go ahead, Councilmember Ronning.
So my concern, and it's my same concern that I had with Montana Rescue Mission when that came for us, there wasn't a clarified ask in that particular ask, and it concerns me that with TIF districts, we just hand over a blank check. I would like to know what the exact ask is for and what the money's going to be given for. And I would just like to see that precedent continue and not change.
Mayor, I got a point of order.
Go ahead, Councilmember Neese.
The original request was denied and reconsidered and denied again. And to bring it back forward, to discuss, to bring the item back to us again, at this time is, I think, out of order. And I think the public has been notified about this amount, and this is the item that we have before us. I don't know of any reason why an organization couldn't come. Maybe it can comment on this, whether they can come again is for a second request, but this is the item before us, and I think trying to go back to an item that we already denied is out of order.
Yeah, I understand that, Councilmember Neese. I'm going to overrule that because it is not the same request. It's a substantially different request, lower amount. It's a little fuzzy as to what would be included. I'm inclined just to move to a vote. Soon, though. Further discussion, Councilmember Purington and Tricky. Purington?
I wouldn't support that amendment, Danny. And one of the reasons why is when we had the original discussion, it was, we had offered half the amount, and it was, oh, well, we've got to be able to attach a dollar amount to each one of these projects. And so now, again, sadly enough, we're sitting there scampering again. And this amount was approved by their board. And so if we start going back and saying, oh, we need to change this, pull this out, and rearrange all of these amounts, then, I think, Lauren, it puts you in that position again, like, gee, I don't know what my board wants. And so I, at this point, would prefer to stick with what the motion is before us, not the amended motion, and approve the 98 or whatever the amount was, and just move forward with it. If you guys have got other claims that you want to bring before the council at a date after your board discusses it, then I would be open to that.
The original request is on the screen for you, and it was a total of $181,000, all of which is outlined above with the Montana Annotated Code, as well as the percentage of those, of the cost breakdown.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move to a vote. Councilmember Tricky, this was your motion. Did you have something else, though, that you wanted to?
Just to answer the question, obviously the $150,000 does not go all the way up to the $181,000, and the intention is just to fill as much of that original request as possible. I don't see them, by law, they can't actually ask for reimbursements for anything that is not reimbursable, and actually, if I remember right, the total amount that you had that was reimbursable was something like about 4 or 5 times the amount that you were asking.
It was about $215,000 was the total that we could have asked for based on reimbursement, as well as that 1 to 5 ratio.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Tricky. So again, the motion is to change the dollar amount from $98,000 to $150,000, and my interpretation would be the usage would have to be consistent with the original recommendation, but not to exceed $150,000. So is the motion clear before we proceed to a vote?
Is that in fact the motion?
Councilor Tricky?
Yes, that is.
Yes, and Councilmember Joy, consistent with yours? Okay, so $150,000 capped by the items on that. Any further discussion on that motion? I guess I'll just comment, as much as I supported the original one, I am a respecter of procedure, and this is, it could have been raised before, it wasn't. I would certainly support if the Community Foundation wanted to come back for another shot on a high priority item, but all the things that have been said. But let's move to a vote. Again, this is the motion for the amendment only. So if in favor of that amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
And so let's do raise your hand if voting in favor. Council members Shaw, Joy, and Tricky. If voting in opposition, please raise your hand. Council members Yakowicz, Neese, Cole, Purington, Ronning, Boyette, and Brown. Brings us back to the original motion for approval by Councilmember Yakowicz and Shaw. Any discussion on the underlying motion? Any further discussion on the underlying motion? If not, all in favor of the underlying motion, please say aye.
Aye.
If opposed, nay. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. That concludes item number 8, brings us item number 9. Tony, would you read item number 9?
Item number 9, Teamsters Local 190 Union Contract, 7/1/2021 through 6/30/2024. Staff recommends approval, action, approval, or disapproval of staff recommendation.
Our Human Resources Director, Carla Stanton, is our presenter this evening. Carla.
Mayor and Council, how are you? I would like to present to you tonight the tentative agreement between the Teamsters Local 190 and the City of Billings, and I am going to ask for your approval tonight. Okay? Andy's going to get me set up here.
Okay, I'm going to move the thing here. Yeah, left and right, you should work on that.
Oh, here, okay.
There you go.
Okay, I think all of you are familiar with who our employees are, the Teamsters Union. They do a lot of good work for us, and they are made up of equipment operators, our dispatchers, our police clerks, our aircraft rescue firefighters, parking, library, account clerks, administrative support. Can you hear me okay? ARF, I said ARF already, electricians, combination inspectors, bailiffs. And I'd like to thank our union team members who participated in these negotiation sessions. It does take a lot of hours and time out of their schedules. Chad Bargstedt from the water treatment plant, Craig Calicott from the airport, Mike Gioso from Met Transit, Pat Kitson from Solid Waste, Ralph Mann, Distribution and Collection, Doug Studner, Water Reclamation Plant, Rhonda Johnson, and Jim Sumas are the Teamster reps. I'm not sure if you're familiar that Jim Larson was our rep. He did retire this year. And he was replaced then by Jim Sumas, who now is going to hand us over to Rhonda Johnson. So she will be the individual that we'll work with on most of our union matters. City team members, I would also like to thank, spent a lot of time as well, of course, Jennifer DeRay from Public Works, Kevin Iflin from Administration, Rusty Logan from Met Transit, Karen Tracy from Legal, Mike Whitaker from Parks and Rec, and Andy Zeller from Finance. So we had really, I think, a really good team. Traditional bargaining, I think you're familiar. Some unions do it differently than others, and how we do the Teamsters is through traditional, where we come to the table and we come with proposals, and you hand proposals back and forth across the table until you come to an agreement. And so that is very traditional, and that is how the Teamsters still prefer to do that. You know, I'm going to go right to the proposals because this year, it was interesting. It was really a challenge this year. We started in April, we ended in July, but the challenge really came in the cost of living. As you know, we're also having difficulty recruiting and retaining people, but then we had a cost of living that in April, when we sat down to negotiate, it was already at 4.2. In May, it went to 5%. In June and July, it went to 5.4. So every month we continued to come to the table. That was only going up. Made it very, very difficult. I believe probably one of my most challenging years. So I think that what I'm going to present to you tonight is fair for our employees, but it is also fair for the city. And I truly believe that. I sincerely believe that. It is a fair offer for the employees as well as the city, because of what the cost of living is doing. I checked today and the August numbers were not released yet, but they should be released this week sometime. Okay, that being said, the items that we are requesting is a 3% cost of living adjustment for July 21, 22, and 23. This is a 3-year agreement. Shift differential pay, we opted to increase that because we're really having difficulty with our night shift. So we wanted to increase our graveyard or night shift pay only, and we did increase that 30 cents. That was a large increase. It's something that typically we don't increase every time, but we felt that may help us with the recruitment of those positions. It's becoming very difficult to find people to fill those night positions. Standby pay has not been increased in several years, and we did increase that a quarter, and that is the pay that employees are paid for being on standby to be fit for duty, for weekend or call-outs or any of those things with pipes bursting, whatever it might be. Personal days, we are going to allow them to take them in 15-minute increments, just like any of our vacation, sick, or comp time. They can take 15 minutes at a time. Most people take them a day at a time, but it is possible to take them in 15 minutes or a half hour, hour if you have an appointment you need to go to. 75 cents, this is new this year, will be provided to our employees who have prescription safety glasses. We will offer $75 every other year for those that need safety glasses, prescription, to perform their job duties. We revised the attendance incentive program. Currently, an employee can get, if they have perfect attendance, they can get 24 hours of vacation. What we decided to do, and really through the input of the Teamsters, is, most of our employees are very, very good. We do have some that I believe do call in sick at times when maybe they're not so sick. But that being said, they came to us and said that what happens is, my mouth is really dry, thank you, that how the attendance incentive ran is it went July to June. And if October, November you got the flu and you were out 3 days, you were done. There was no chance to get anything back. So what we're going to do is we're going to calculate it every 4 months, the same amount of time. They don't get any additional hours, but that way every 4 months you have an opportunity to still earn some of that incentive, so that if you blew it the first 3 or 4 months, you still have the opportunity to earn it again maybe in that second 4 months or that third 4 months. So I do hope that will help with some of the sick abuse that we may have from time to time. The other thing that we changed is if an employee is suspended without pay, they cannot cash out comp during their disciplinary pay period or in the next 2 weeks. Because what tends to happen is we have a lot of people that work a lot of overtime, so they have a lot of comp time on the books. So if they do something they need to be disciplined for and they're already at the level of suspension, then we suspend them for a day off without pay, 8 or 10 hours or 2 days, whatever that may be. But so many of them have so much time built up that they can go and cash it out, their comp time out. So they never really feel it. Not that we want them to feel the pain, but they need to feel that it's serious and they need to correct their behavior. So I think that is a step in the right direction as well. We updated military leave just basically to mirror what the state statute was. It just needed some updating. Formalized the day after Thanksgiving as a holiday in lieu of Columbus Day. Added safety language, which is very common sense, obey all federal, state, and local laws, but it does help us when we are in disciplinary corrective actions that we can refer back to the contract, so that gave us one place to do that. We increased the boot allowance from $130 to $150 for our workers that need to wear steel-toed boots. We also said, though, we added language that if you are separating service within 60 days of purchasing those boots, then you reimburse the city back unless you had pre-approval from a supervisor, because we do see at times too that a month or two out, they will buy, a brand new pair of boots, the contract started, and things like that happen. Most of our people do not do that, but it happens occasionally, so this is in an effort to stop some of that. We updated new hire notification language. Met Transit just clarified some blocks of work language that you will have no more than 2 start times. Solid waste, there was an issue with how we bid routes and landfills, so we have done that. Will be done by seniority, and upon a position becoming vacant in the solid waste, and then in landfill it's based on the job classification, since we have a couple classifications of workers there. Communication center, we will provide 12 hours of rest between 2 back-to-back 16-hour shifts. Public Works is going to provide, they already provided cold weather gear, we just solidified this. What we found is that we were giving basically $70 a year for cold weather gear for, a bib, overall, sweatshirt, coverall, those type of things, cold weather jacket. But they asked if we could pay the same amount of money, not provide any more money, but if we could do it every other year and they can buy a better quality jacket and it'll last those 2 years. So I think that was a step in the right direction as well. We did increase, as you'll see, the water treatment plant technicians, and that was a big cost on this contract, as well as our police clerks. You'll see when I get to the cost, that's where a lot of money was spent this year. But there were positions that needed to be upgraded or reclassified to a higher level of pay just to recruit and maintain workers, retain them. I'll go through the costs quickly. Feel free to ask questions. The 3% COLA in each year of the contract is $766,743. Keep in mind this contract impacts about 434 employees. Also keep in mind that 52% of those employees are at step 7. So if there's no cost of living, there's no merit raises, there isn't anything else. So this cost of living will help, will give a raise to those 52% of the employees that are already at step 7. The cost to increase standby is $14,000 annually, and the cost to increase the graveyard shift differential is approximately $15,000 annually. The boot allowance is about $5,000 for the city. And the cost, this is where our big ticket items were, as I said earlier. The police support specialist is $45,000 cost. And then the treatment plant tax is $34,000 to reclassify those positions. Do you have any questions on the Teamsters? currently, if you do, or do you want to wait till later, or?
Any
would you
specific
rather?
questions to Teamsters, to Councilmember Ronnie Parrington-Nice?
Thank you. Carla, the communication center, can you clarify to me what that is?
Communication center?
Yeah.
Oh, that would be our 911.
Okay, that's
Sorry,
what I thought.
911 dispatch.
Okay, that's what I thought. If I'm remembering correctly, there's a big challenge in staffing those positions, that they're understaffed right now. What was it prior? I mean, 12 hours seems already really like a short amount of time between two 16-hour back-to-back shifts. What was it before, 8 hours?
You know, we actually, Councilmember Ronning and Mayor and Council, we actually tried to give them 16 hours off between, and they have asked, some of their members have asked to be 12. So it's actually a shorter time period than we typically tried to give them.
Okay.
Okay.
Gee whiz, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
Councilmember Parrington?
Thanks. So Carla, on the equipment, is that based on receipted costs? I mean, you don't just give them the money and then they go and buy it. It has to be, it's a receipted cost.
Councilmember Parrington, are you talking in regards to the boot allowance?
The boots, the glasses.
Yeah, anything like that.
The clothing, yeah.
Correct, yes. We have to see receipts. And a lot of times we order the boots or the coats, and then, the street, solid waste, public works departments, they will actually have some coats of various sizes on hand so that they can just place their order if they want to do it that way. If they don't like what we have samples of, then they can go on their own time. But yes, they do have to bring back receipts.
So one other question. What is the median age of your Step 7 employees?
Well, our median age of the city, I guess I don't know the median age of our Step 7 people, but the median age of our city employees is about 42 and a half now. It has dropped over the last few years through retirements and various things. But I can get that for you. I just don't have that off the top of my head.
Okay, because that seemed like that was quite a bump for them to continue to get the 3%. They just don't get the step.
Right, yes, they would get a 3% increase if you approve it tonight.
Okay, and one last question, Mr. Mayor. So with the COLA, then how much does it add to that 3% with their step, their benefits, and all of that? What are you talking about usually, I guess?
Well, obviously, if they're stepped out, then they get the 3%, okay? And then the benefits, we usually figure benefits are about 30% or so with health insurance, because that's our biggest spend for the benefit side. If somebody is going through steps, though, if you're familiar with our step system, it's a 7-year step process.
Right.
So each year on their anniversary, it is a 5% increase. Okay, and then it is adjusted by the cost of living.
So how does that equate, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, but how does that equate to, say, that increase in a year?
Well, every position is at a different grade, is that what you're asking? And then, so every position is graded differently. There might be like positions within the same grade, and then it goes 7 steps across.
Okay.
Okay? And once you hit that 7th step, then you no longer have a raise unless the cost of living is approved by City Council.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you very much. And 52% are maxed out on steps.
On step 7 currently.
Councilmember Nice?
Thank you, Mayor. That was some of the same questions I had, because when we talk about a 3% cost of living adjustment, in reality, we're going to see more. I think Andy and I worked on this a couple of years ago. It turned out to be 4.5% was the average cost increase, and because of the additional steps and longevity and things like that. So we will see a larger increase in the payroll due to steps and longevity in this Teamsters contract. Is that correct?
Councilmember Nice, that would be correct.
And did any of the steps or longevity rates change at all?
No. No, we didn't change anything on longevity, just the standby and shift differential that we talked about.
Okay, thank you. And Mary, just another quick follow-up.
Go ahead.
So in your presentation, you said you increased the differential pay 30 cents per hour and the standby increased 25 cents per hour. But what was the pay? Are you saying you just increased their standard rate by 30 cents, or is there a rate? Is there already a standby rate, and now you're going to add 25 cents to whatever that standby rate is?
Correct. So Councilmember Nice, Mayor and Council, yes, that is correct. The standby pay was currently, I'm just going to go blank here. I know the shift differential was 95 cents, and we did take that to $1.25, and then standby went from.
It's on your slides.
Oh, it would be $1 to I know the answer. $1.75 to $2.
Okay, so the standby, if they're on standby, they're getting $2 an hour more than their regular pay. Is that?
Well, no, when you're on standby, you're not working.
Oh, I see. It's
Okay,
just
you're
a plain
just paid to be
$2
on
an
call
hour.
and be fit for
Got
duty
it.
in case we have a pipe burst in the street or those type of things, okay? So that's a flat rate of pay. And if they get called in, then it would be overtime, but then the standby pay stops.
Okay, and on the shift differential, because I know that's tough, that's a tough shift to get, is the late hours. Is that competitive as far as the differential compared to other businesses and other organizations and things like that?
You know, it's not competitive with our police, and the Teamsters will always remind me of that, okay? I mean, if that's an answer, but in all humor. But as far as I know, it is, and some places don't pay standby pay.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Thank you.
But most public sector places do.
Thank you. Councilmember Shaw?
Thank you. I move to approve the Teamsters Local 190 union contract. It's not a public hearing. Oh, you're not even finished. I'm sorry.
That's great.
I was ready to just do this one and then move on to the next one, but you want to do all as one. Okay, never mind. Keep going.
Thank you, though.
Yeah.
Okay, Carla, what else do you have?
Okay, just very quickly, the non-bargaining. Typically, the non-bargaining, they are the people that supervise all of our Teamsters, and usually then if there's an increase to Teamsters cost of living, then typically that is awarded to the non-bargaining as well. And keep in mind that 2% this year was already in the budget for all of our groups, so we are looking at 1%, and Andy will tell you how we're going to fund that when I'm finished here, okay? So you have three options. You can approve the contract as proposed, postpone action on the contract and, ask for additional information, or say no and we'll go back to the table and drawing board. And again, as I said earlier, the 2% was in the contract, and Andy will, if approved, will explain how we're going to get where we get the additional 1%.
And that concludes your
That concludes my
presentation. Okay, thank you very much. Now, back to Councilmember Shaw.
Apologies for cutting you off. I move to approve the Teamsters Local 190 union contract as recommended by staff. And then I'd like to speak to the motion. If it gets a second.
Is there a second? Councilmember Yakovich. Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, Carla, thank you so much for all this hard work. I know this was months and months of hard negotiation. Really appreciate that. If you're telling me that you think this is a fair deal on both sides, then I agree and will certainly support it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councilmember Ronning.
Thank you. Carla, having gone through this with you 3 years ago as well with all of the unions, and hearing from different union leaders how incredibly well respected you are and how fair you are as a negotiator and how tough you are, I agree that I'm going to take your word for it that this is a fair contract as well. I guess the comment that I have, since we're in discussion, and this is also to City Administrator Kukulski, I was surprised about the lack of communication with council this year. Why was that? Why are we just learning the majority of what was really coming down to this contract now? We got one visit prior, and now we're kind of learning this. Well, why was council not brought more into the conversation?
Councilmember Ronning, I guess I'd like to know, what your expectations are for that. I'm thinking back 3 years ago when we met, Bruce and I believe it was, met prior to negotiations. We basically had the one meeting. And unless he kept you more in the loop than that, I'm not sure. But we had the one meeting kind of saying, here, this is what we're looking at, going to kick it off. And this time it ended up being more during it because I really felt we needed that direction in the middle of it, truly, because of what was happening with the true CPIU and wanting guidance and not to totally shock you if it comes in higher than your expectations are. So what would you like to see, I guess? Is that a fair question?
Sure. I guess more than just one meeting report before it gets to us, but that's fine too. I guess I would like to know more in the process, understand more of what the negotiations are. I know you have police and fire coming up, but it's not as extensive as it was 3 years ago. But I guess that would just be my one comment.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Brown and Neese.
So in all of this, are what you listed, those bullet points, are all of the changes or just the big changes?
All of the changes, Councilmember.
Pretty short list.
You know, the contract is so, for lack of a better word, seasoned, I think, that after a while, there aren't a lot of things, a lot of changes you can make to it. So what happens, I think, is you sit down at negotiations and, we're the keepers of the money. The city truly they're the keepers of the money, and that's what they want, So you can tweak little things, but there aren't it doesn't seem like we have a lot of new things, to really work on, unless we find that through grievances, there's new issues that have come out. And then we may look at, okay, there's maybe this language here isn't clear. If we end up having a lot of grievances in one area and not another, then those are things we can look at. But a lot of times it's such a but all of our contracts really are pretty seasoned, for lack of a better word. And even our supervisors don't have a lot of things that they have issues with that they want us to bring forward and renegotiate. So,
We like that.
So one follow-up.
Please, Councilmember Brown.
So I know that the last time we had some issues with company or city-owned vehicles being taken out of the county or something like that. Is all of that stuff resolved, or did that just not come up?
I believe that's resolved, that they can't go to the BUFSA. And if they are, then if they live outside of that, then they have to park at the nearest fire station or something, some city location, some city facility.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to speak as far as what Penny said about the information. This is really the first time I've seen that. I think I heard some information about a potential meeting. I don't know how many council members were involved in that meeting. So I don't know, really, this is all I've seen. The memo does state that the contract can be read at the city clerk's office. I think with our technology now, I would expect that public document to be online and available for people to actually read. So if this is all the changes, I'm sure you've done a good job, but I would like to see a little bit more council involvement in the next negotiations. Maybe we're not directly sitting across the table from the union, but we're having staff and council member meetings to discuss it.
Councilmember Neese, in my opinion, for whatever that is worth, I think it would be difficult to have you at the table in the end, where you're going to be the ones that are the final say whether that's approved or not. And maybe you don't mean that, but in past years, people, we've had members that have always said they wanted to come, and so we open it up and you can come and sit. It's open. People can come and attend, I guess, watch if they would like. But we don't really have people that ever do that.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure if you heard me. I said I'm not so necessarily
just want to meet with me ahead of time.
Yeah, not necessarily meeting at the table with the unions, but with the staff prior to the meetings or after the meetings and things like that throughout the process.
Okay, Council, this is we have a motion for approval. Councilmember Shaw, second by Councilmember Yakovich. Any further discussion on the motion? Councilmember Yakovich.
Well, just perhaps, Ms. Stanton, for those who are interested in coming to more than one meeting, maybe you could just throw that out at the beginning. I know that you gave us timelines, and I was able to attend one meeting, and that was great. But if you offered, hey, who would like to come to another meeting, you might get a couple more who are passionate or could be helpful. And what I segue is, you caught my interest on most difficult time. And it makes me worry sustainability. We don't want to burn you out. And it is real, right? I mean, if you said it was among the most difficult times, then it must have been really tough. I guess I'm just wondering how to sustain this negotiation. Let's say if you got sick or you retired or something, and your team...
Someday I'll retire.
Well, your team, I guess, how can we ensure, again, sustainability of this negotiations, because it sounds like it's pretty grueling on your part.
Councilmember Yakovich, Mayor and Council, it is, but that's my job. I mean, that is what you pay me to do. So I always keep a good attitude about it. And And what happens at the table stays at the table. I'm never going to hold a grudge. That's not who I am. So it's not, in the end, it's really not work. I think you develop those relationships and you just do your best to keep them. And you really need to. It's all about trusting each other. If they don't trust me sitting across the table and I can't trust them, it makes it way more challenging. But I think we do have really good trust.
Right. Well, and perhaps if council can be of support, I know that we are willing and we're anxious to help you in whatever way we can. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Trickey.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that nothing in this list actually surprised me. It didn't look like it was anything out of the ordinary or anything like that. So from my opinion, if it's going to be like that, maybe an update every once in a while or something like that, but when you get into something where you're going into, all sorts of like serious workflow changes or something like that, which is changing, affecting the structure of the bureaucracy in the organization, that is when I start to get a little bit more interested and, and not necessarily be involved, but would need some time to think through the implications of it ahead of time. Stuff like this, it's pretty straightforward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Council. The only thing I guess I would add is how much we appreciate our close to 1,000 different workers across the city. That's 1,000 different individuals, so there's always unique stories, but by and large, they work hard and honestly, and we appreciate it.
They really, really do. I would second that.
Okay, before we move to a vote, Chris, any sort of final word?
Could I just offer a thank you as well as city administration? The team did, I think, an excellent job in negotiating. I sat at the table for 15 of the last 25 years. It sounds a lot easier than it is, I can assure you. And I have learned that there's some real benefit in my position at not being at the table, but working directly with the team that is. So you can't do that if you don't have great people, and we really do have good people who have developed trust and relationships. And ultimately, yes, we know we live in a market system and we need how compensation is a common, if not always a conversation here. It's also a desire as your city administration to make sure that our managers who are held accountable for delivering services and making decisions day to day have contracts that they can work within as well to help them maximize their responsibilities. So it really is a complex system, and I thank them for their efforts.
Thank you. We'll proceed to a vote then on the motion, which is for approval, consistent with the staff recommendation that you've heard from Carla on the Teamsters Local 190 union contract. If in favor of that motion, please say aye. Aye. If in opposition, please say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, staff. And our workers. It is now a little after 7:30, so council will take a break and try to come back hopefully a little before 7:45, where we will take off on item number 10. that recital went. And make it just that we need to conduct the investigation, not make those final conclusions. So that's the intent. You can look at it. No. You can eat the paper. Okay, I think we're all back, so let's get started again.
I don't want to actually. He's such a jerk.
If the gallery will come to order, we will get started again. We left off with item number 10. So, Tony, are you still with us? Yes. Would you read item number 10, please?
Item number 10, public hearing and resolution approving and adopting the budget amendments for FY 2022. Staff recommends approval. Action, approval or disapproval of staff recommendation.
Andy.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have one slide. This is a budget amendment based upon your previous action approving the council or the Teamster contract. This budget amendment will increase all funds except the general fund and public safety for the additional 1% COLA that was not included in the original budget. That total amounts $352,571. The reason we're not asking for an increase in general fund and public safety, the increase there was about $150,000. Again, these are Teamster and non-bargaining, but given the imbalance there, and it would do nothing but to make that worse. And then we do have budgetary savings because there was no primary election this year. Tax revenue did come in about $35,000 more than what we estimated it would. Some vacancy savings through the new positions that were authorized but being held open a little bit longer. Obviously, they couldn't get filled right away on July 1st. So those items are going to amount to our savings for the general fund and public safety costs. What I don't have here, but I do have on the staff memo, and I pulled up there, is the amount by fund. Most of these funds I'll highlight they're not tax-supported funds. So when we see our tax revenue, in this case, it did outpace this COLA, but this is unique circumstance. Our rates and fees are set assuming approximately around a 3% COLA, just to make sure we can cover future wage increases. I think that's all I have on that. So I'll turn it over to you with any questions, Mayor.
Okay, Councilor Purington and Nice.
Well, just a quick question. You made the comment they're not tax funded. That last list that you put up there?
Yep.
So how are they funded if they're not tax funded?
Mayor, Councilmember Purington, most of ours up here, there are some that are tax funded, absolutely, but our big ones, water, wastewater, solid waste, those are all through user charges, airport user charges, some of it through grants. So yeah, there's other funding sources that are than just pure property tax revenue.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Councilmember Denise.
Thank you, Mayor. With that list up there, the PD1, the extra $2,000, that's not extra assessment, that's just extra authority to spend, probably extra reserves in PD1, is that correct?
Mayor, Council Member Nice, you're set off. You didn't look like him.
I told you 2 votes.
It is not going to change the assessment amount. This actually will still allow them to work within the assessment amount collected.
Any other discussions for Andy? Thank you very much. We'll open up for public hearing then. This is opportunity for anybody who would like to comment on item number 10, this proposed budget amendment. If you'd like to comment on item number 10, please come to the podium. Is there any public comment on item number 10? No one is coming to the podium, so we will close the public hearing. Back to council. Councilmember Nice.
Having conducted a public hearing considered written and spoken testimony, I move to approve the resolution to adopt the budget amendments as recommended by staff.
Thank you. Lots of seconds. Councilmember Triki. Motion is for approval. Now, discussion on the motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Motion is for approval. If not, we'll proceed to a vote. If in favor of the motion for approval, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Brings us then to item number 11. This is a joint public hearing, joint item. So Tony, would you read both the heading and also the subparts A and B? Tony.
Number 11, joint public hearing and ordinances for the following. A, adopt an interim zoning ordinance imposing a moratorium on new marijuana businesses. B, adopt an emergency business license ordinance imposing a temporary suspension on issuing business licenses to marijuana businesses for 90 days.
Gina Dahl is our presenter according to our agenda here. Gina is our city attorney, for anybody who might be watching at home, and if they did not know that already. Gina.
Good evening, Council.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Biakwich.
I know you may, I apologize, but could you explain joint public hearing just before you start, what that means?
Yes, Councilmember Yakovich, Mayor and Council, we are, there actually isn't much of a presentation here for both of these, but the presentation would just be combined for both of these ordinances because all the information is so intertwined and intermingled that it just makes more sense to address both at the same time because your questions are often overlapping on this issue. So we'll have a joint public hearing and the presentation will be all together and then public can come up and comment on either item. You can just hold one public comments session for both items.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Like I said, I really don't have much of a presentation, and I actually, to be quite honest, didn't realize I was presenting the interim zoning ordinance portion of this. We just drafted one staff memo, and my name ended up being at the top, so I guess that's how I ended up being the presenter. But I see that Nicole is here, and I think Wyeth has assigned her to be the backup here if there are questions about that particular ordinance. So, as I've said, you have both of these items here before you, an interim zoning ordinance, which would impose a moratorium on new marijuana businesses. And you also have the emergency business license ordinance before you, which would impose a temporary suspension on issuing business licenses to marijuana businesses for 90 days. So you, as just discussed, you will need two separate motions and actions for each of these ordinances. And because it's an interim zoning ordinance and the other one is the emergency ordinance, these can both be approved with a single reading here tonight. So just a little bit of background for you. Under a prior version of the Montana Medical Marijuana Act, which was enacted in 2011, I believe, the state statutes expressly authorized this local governments in the city here did prohibit storefront medical marijuana storefronts. So Council passed Ordinance 11-5545 in November of 2011, which prohibited storefronts under that authority granted by that state statute. So Ordinance 11-5545 does not prohibit dispensaries because the authority to prohibit dispensaries was provided by a later amendment to state statute, which was in 2017. The city previously relied on Ordinance 12-5587 to not allow dispensaries by using that ordinance, which required all businesses to comply with local, state, and federal law. However, given the changes in the law, House Bill 701, that you're required to reconsider all of that. Come January 1st, everything has been legalized essentially. So you now are faced with considering new regulations for all of those businesses. We are asking you to approve these ordinances basically because you have a lot of work to do yet on these regulations. It would essentially undermine the work that you're currently doing to establish those regulations for the marijuana businesses if you were to issue business licenses prior to enacting the zoning ordinances and other regulations such as licensing requirements and any other regulations you may consider, like caps on those dispensaries. Just one more note, we do currently have one medical marijuana dispensary that is licensed by the city. These emergency ordinances will not impact that one existing business license. As you will recall, there is a court-issued temporary restraining order that prohibits the city from revoking or limiting the existing license of this one dispensary. So the proposed ordinances target only new applicants seeking marijuana business license or that particular kind of zoning. So just wanted to clarify for you all that there is one existing license that you're aware of we're currently in litigation with that this does not affect that business. With that, I don't have any other anything else to present, but we do have the ordinances with the mayor's proposed edits. I think you've all had an opportunity to review that, and I think you all have hard copies in front of you as well. And I'm not sure, Mayor, if you want to review those items that you have.
If you've got it on the screen, why don't you go ahead?
Is this the, they're both in the, okay, not this one. Just go back to the, yeah, I can do it over here.
While you're finding that, why don't I just give the 30,000-foot view for anybody who might be listening of kind of what the intent of these were. I'd call them cleanup technical changes. For example, both of the earlier drafts directed the city administration, City County Planning Division, Billings Police Department, and City Legal Department to take certain actions. Our charter limits our ability to specifically prohibits us from giving direction to other city employees other than the city administrator. So this changes it to directing the city administrator, presumably with the assistance of those other departments. It makes that change in both of those draft resolutions. It, in the very first one dealing with regulations of business licenses, mentions just in one of the recitals that there's also being restrictions on locations being considered. And it mentions the concern that if a moratorium were not put in place, that there might be an application granted that would be only made illegal or non-conforming shortly thereafter, after businesses had invested a lot of money. It uses the term marijuana businesses, which was specifically defined in the old draft but not used. And those, I would say, were the major changes. It also added a sentence dealing with situation, what would happen if a business license were inadvertently issued. And it specifically says that in that case, that license is to be deemed void ab initio, which is Latin for from the beginning. So it's like it doesn't exist. It was improperly granted. And those are kind of the run of, or the overview. Copies of this are available on the back cart, I believe. And they were also distributed by email to the council members late last week. I don't know if you had those up or if that's sufficient.
Mayor, I did have the business license ordinance up as you went through. I was scrolling through. So
okay. All right. So we'll if council wants to ask questions about those, we'll do that. Otherwise, we'll just proceed. Do we now move to a presentation by Nicole on the zoning component, or?
I'm not sure she has much of one.
Okay, or at least an opportunity to comment.
Well, anytime a new use comes to your attention and you have no zoning that appropriately addresses that use in your zoning code, the state law allows you to adopt a short-term measure called a moratorium to allow the city or the county to address that use and that issue that's happening in your community and give you the space and time available to do that. And that is essentially what the moratorium is. You have used the moratorium in the city of Billings several times in my 2 decades working for the city, including once for pipelines, for adult uses, particularly nude dancing, because that was an issue that somehow we created a loophole that somebody walked right through, and we had to say, okay, moratorium on this use while we figure out how to get our regulations in order. So this would be similar to that.
Okay, thank you. This will be a joint public hearing at some point, but are there questions for staff before we move to public hearing? Councilmember Purington and Joy.
So I just wanted to be sure that I had this in my brain, what we're doing tonight. It's for a moratorium up to, or, you know, the emergency, what did you call it? The emergency ordinance until January 1, because it runs 90 days. So that will be to January 1. And in the event that the voters vote it down, where we don't have dispensaries in Billings, then this kind of goes away. I mean, it's kind of a moot point then. Is that correct?
Well, Councilmember Purington, Mayor and Council, not exactly. The vote that is going to, the ballots is going out to the voters in November is strictly with regard to adult use dispensaries.
Right.
So the committee and council, we are all still working on regulations for the remainder of the businesses because there are those other categories, including the medical marijuana, which is not going to a vote. So we will have certain types of businesses either way that will need to be regulated.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to ask, in terms of this, I get the idea behind the emergency moratorium. Have there been any businesses that have come forward and applied for business licenses since we've begun this process at council, or do you anticipate any businesses coming forward to apply for a license? Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Councilmember Joy. Actually, we have had an application recently for, the application was a little unclear. It basically just said retail sales. As I understand it, the clerk engaged in a bit of conversation with that applicant to determine what more specifically it was for, and was told that it was for medical marijuana. So retail sales of medical marijuana would fall under the storefront businesses prohibition. However, we could be faced with a different kind of application. For example, somebody who didn't want to open a storefront, which is the difference between a storefront and a dispensary is simply openly accessible. So if an applicant came to the city to request a business license for a dispensary, we would be faced with a difficult situation of having to determine how to grant that license or not grant that license, because we are currently, we have this situation where we have been relying on our ordinance, which says you can't get a business license if you are not complying with federal, state, or local law. And that's the ordinance we've been relying on to deny business licenses. However, our ongoing litigation has thrown a wrinkle in that, and the court has said that the city cannot enforce federal law. So we need this ordinance in order to have time to establish those regulations before we start granting business licenses.
Mayor, follow up, please.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Just a little follow-up. like, I did something very silly. I tried to read HB 701. That was a silly thing to do. I'm just joking. It's a very serious thing to do. Everyone should do it. It's just very hard to understand. One of the things I thought I kind of read in there, is there any possibility that even within HB 107, that there's a contradiction in different areas as to a license issued by the state and whether or not that the issued from the state license would be higher than a no dispensary prohibition at the local level? So, and I read that, and I'm not an attorney, I didn't understand whether or not that's in conflict. It sort of read as if that could be a conflict area. So do you have an opinion about that? Thank you.
Councilmember Joy, I'm not exactly sure that I understand which section you read, but it's my understanding, the bill, how the bill reads is that the state would not be issuing a marijuana business license. Actually, they don't call them business license, just would not license them for whatever category of business they were applying for if it was not allowed in the local jurisdiction. Was that not your question? Okay.
Go ahead, Councilor Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And where I found that seemed to be in conflict was for that 18-month period of time.
So starting January 1st for that 18 months, you're right, the state will only be taking applications for the businesses, the categories of businesses that, for businesses that are already medical marijuana license holders with the state, and then if they're also in good standing with the department and if they're in compliance with local regulations. And they won't take applications from new people for adult use dispensaries until that first 18 months has passed.
Okay, Councilmember Tricky.
So that's the crux of my concern. Sorry, my phone is yelling at me and it's going into my hearing aids. If I don't tell it to stop, I won't be able to hear your answer. So my concern is that someone currently has a medical marijuana license. We do this moratorium, and I think the moratorium is a good idea. It makes sense to me. But we do this moratorium. That means that we have to have our regulations in place by the 13th of December, essentially, the middle of December. And that would mean then that anybody that currently has a medical marijuana license would have 14 days, probably something like 5 business days, in order to actually come into compliance with our standards so that they would be in good standing on the 1st of January. Or will they be able to do that later and then be able to get?
Well, I think what the state is looking at is simply if there are local regulations. For example, we anticipate that we'll have a zoning ordinance that may or may not limit to certain zoning districts. So the state would then look at, is this a medical marijuana facility that we have already licensed? And then are there any local regulations? Yes, hypothetically, yes, the city of Billings has this zoning ordinance that restricts it to these 2 or 5 zoning districts, whatever those may be. And is this business that's asking us for a license, asking the state for a license, is it in that zoning district? Does it comply with that local regulation? And if so, it would be in good standing.
So it's not going to be the January date that's going to be determining it. It's going to be when they apply to open up an adult dispensary in Billings.
It'll be when they apply, but the state will look back to what was in effect on January 1st. And if they were in Because the state will only be accepting applications from businesses that were, the medical marijuana businesses that had a license or in the process of a license on the November 2020 election date.
Right. So if they have a license right now and we get our regulations in place by the middle of December, and then they apply to open up a grow business in February in the city of Billings, then they will be in compliance with the law and we will be able to issue them a license and the state will be able to license them as well.
But yes, potentially, depending on if they are in the correct zoning district.
I mean, yeah, if everything's correct, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm just worried about that time frame because if it's like you have to be in compliance on January 1st, then we're giving people just a few days to come into compliance. But if they don't have to be in compliance until they actually apply, then
I think the January 1st date is simply for the state to have a place to go back to and say what was the local ordinances in effect on January 1st, just so that they have a starting point to
all right. Well, that takes care of my major concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. That is, I think, a very legitimate concern. So, and it is complicated. So maybe you could just take a new look at the statute and make sure that we're comfortable, because anybody who is doing business there, we want to be fair to them. So, other discussion or questions for Gina or Nicole before we go to public hearing? Don't see any, so we will open it up for public hearing. If anybody would like to comment on item 11A or 11B, that's both the zoning ordinance moratorium and the emergency business license moratorium items, this is your opportunity. Please tell us your name and address and ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. Tim Warburton, 3444 Lucky Penny Lane. I really want to just address a certain section of this. I also can understand why you guys would want to do this. It does kind of make sense. But the third paragraph, the third whereas down on the second page, I'm going to change the language a little bit. It says the city council of the city of Billings has determined that the operation of establishments that blank. I'm going to say insert your issue here, whatever your issue is. And today it's cannabis, but it could be Planned Parenthood, it could be selling guns, it could be casinos, bars, whatever establishment you don't like. This establishment could be detrimental to, harmful to, and a threat to the peace, property, health, safety, and welfare. It's pretty vague. It can mean a lot of different things. Until such time as you guys have had a time to study that. So this seems like a real slippery slope where we start to say, actually, the city council doesn't like this type of business specifically because it could be a threat. And we're going to start really regulating it and really just trying to do everything we can to eliminate it. And so if this can be done for cannabis, I don't see why this can be done for anything else. And I really think that's a slippery slope that you're going down. Because what this is saying is that a majority of the city council could say, we don't want any more blank in this town. And we're going to enact an emergency ordinance to do everything we can to keep them out. I think it's a real slippery slope. I think you should look at this specific whereas and look at that language. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think we will come back to that language. Further discussion from the public. Is there anybody else who would like to comment on item 11A or 11B? This is your opportunity. No one else is coming to the podium, so we will close the public hearing. Now come back to council. Councilmember Denise?
Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken testimony, I move to approve an interim zoning ordinance imposing a moratorium on new marijuana businesses recommended by staff.
Second.
That's concerning item 11A, dealing with the zoning ordinance proposal. You heard that. Discussion now on the motion. Councilmember Boyette.
this is a brand-new thing that's happened to the state of Montana. That's why we're doing this. We should have had this motion, I think, some time ago to freeze everything, to give us time to figure out what we're going to do. And by January 1st, we should have all the knowledge we need. We can set our regulations in place. Then we're open for business. I think these two are great ideas, which we should have done sooner.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Boyette. Here I'm going to introduce discussion on the recital that was referenced by Mr. Warburton. It is on the second page of the draft zoning regulation, and it's the third one down on the second page. And the recital begins, whereas the City Council of the City of Billings has determined, if everybody is with me, that's the topic of some alternate language. The same concern was expressed by Councilmember Treaky in emails this afternoon. I recognize not everybody sees those last-minute emails. Because the recital says that the council has determined that the operation of establishments that sell marijuana, et cetera, could be detrimental, and it does say could be, but could be detrimental to, harmful to, et cetera, et cetera. If that is a concern for council, I laid on your staff or on your chair some softer language, call it.
I guess we're talking about number A first, aren't we?
Yes.
So isn't B the second one that you're addressing B?
No, it's in both. So it would be on the second page of the zoning draft, zoning one, and it's the third one down, the third full one down, fourth partial, if you count the partial one. And so the language is up there that is an alternative, that instead of just saying it could be those bad things, it says that the council has determined that additional investigation, consideration, and public input is required to decide whether those things are the case. So that's a possible change. You want to explain that, Councilmember Neese?
Mayor, I would accept that as a friendly amendment to the motion if the second would accept it.
Okay, so the friendly amendment that has been included as part of your motion now. Further discussion, Councilmember Neese, you can speak to your motion, and the Councilmember Treaky.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to point out what Gina said about the fact that this is not going to impact the current businesses in town. I think there was an editorial in the paper I read the other day about how we're trying to ban and put these businesses out of place. We're not doing that. The state has legalized it. We're working with the state to regulate it as we can, but all the personal use, there's nothing that we're going to be doing, and we're not trying to kick it out of the city. So I just wanted to, again, thank you for bringing that to attention, that we're not trying to stop these businesses from moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Treaky.
And I just wanted to say that the mayor's language did pretty much take care of that, my objection to that clause. So I'm fine with this language.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion. Councilmember Ronning.
Thank you. So, and I support the change in this language also, but I guess I would like to clarify with Chris. So this would say that we are going to do that additional investigation. So can you explain how that's going to be done and how that's going to be provided to City Council? Like what steps are going to be taken to bring additional investigation, consideration, and more public input?
So it's referencing what we're trying to do between now and ultimately our adoption. I would say under the tight time frame that we are, most of the discussions are going to continue to be during Monday evenings, during public meetings. We were on the last work session, we're on the next work session, and we're within 30 days of needing to present a draft to the public. So there may be one or two committee meetings that come together between then, depending upon the progress we make this week and next. But I would say most of the dialogue is ultimately going to take place at this table in this room with all of you in public meetings.
Okay, so I guess so the word investigation, that for me says perhaps we're going to get reports from Chief St. John or Chief Valdez or someone who's going to tell us in regard to an investigation that's been done, or give us a report from another community or something like that who already has this in place?
Sorry, Councilmember Roning. The other thing I should have added to that is, as a staff, we are continuing to locate and be open to what are practice, for instance, talking with the city manager of Bozeman, trying to understand what other regulations are being considered both in-state and out-of-state. So that's how I would broadly reference, I guess, investigation or research or homework to try to bring to you and the public as much information as we can, guiding our recommended language for this body.
Okay, I'm good with that as long as it's in accordance with the fact that this is dealing with public safety and crime and things like that. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion? Is there any, Councilmember Joy?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I kind of got a little bit lost here. Does anyone know the recital where it says that there will be a cap on the number of dispensaries, or I don't recall. On the which page? I'm sorry.
The council is considering a number of regulations.
Mayor, if I may.
Gina can help us here.
The cap is referenced in the emergency ordinance. I don't believe it's referenced in the interim zoning ordinance, which is the motion that's before you right now, so I don't think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion before we move to a vote? I am not seeing any. So the motion again is for approval. It has the amendment that includes this and that relevant recital. If there are no questions as to the scope of the motion, we'll proceed to a vote. If in favor of the motion on item 11A, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, please say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Brings us then to item 11B. Councilmember Neese.
Having conducted a public hearing, considered written and spoken testimony, I move to approve an emergency business license ordinance imposing a temporary suspension on issuing business licenses to marijuana business for 90 days as recommended by staff, and including the language change as presented by the mayor.
Okay. Second by Councilmember Brown. Discussion now on that motion. Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and thank you for helping out to find the correct spot where that was mentioned. I guess I support the fact that we have to go forward with research and pulling together best practices that have been used in other locations for us to manage the regulations. Without any regulations, we would probably end up with something that would be very undesirable. However, I am somewhat concerned that a lot of the language in both of these is very, I don't know exactly what to say, quite negative. And I'm not saying due to a lack of information that we actually have all that data. So when we have a zoning regulations, we say based on our facts of finding, but we haven't actually established any facts yet. That concerns me. In order for us to really, we use our growth policy in order to establish zone changes or whatever. Those documents are very positive. They say, what does the city of Billings want? We want thriving communities, we want safe neighborhoods, we want children to be in an environment that is safe for them. These documents don't actually show a positive image, vision of what we want this to look like in our city. It's going to happen regardless. So our growth policy says we want thriving businesses, we want certain kinds of arrangements of our city that presents a positive image. Regardless, this is going to happen to our community. I would like us to actually try to think of what we do want instead of what we don't want. We don't want too many of a particular kind of business. We don't want them next to schools. Those are all things that we don't want. But what do we do want? That's a different frame of mind. So that's kind of where I sit with this. We need these moratorium in place. We need this emergency order. But I would like us to think about what we do want, and not necessarily just what we don't want. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councilor Biakwich.
Well, I appreciate all of you putting your effort as a committee, and I appreciate the effort of putting these documents together. I'm anti-pod, I mean, I just think it's such a detrimental move for our city, and I appreciate Councilperson Roning's comment. I mean, we need to investigate, of course. We got the DEA. We got so much stats from other cities. I just can't see any good with this. It's like alcohol. I get it. People can celebrate and have a good time with it, but the consequences of DUI, I work in the mental health area. The people I work with in mental health, it increases suicide. It increases poor behavioral health. The smell of it, it's going to impact the neighborhoods. It just a whole big problem. I don't think we can, I mean, for me, and certainly I'm getting off in four months, so you will be rid of me. But it's just one of the worst decisions our state has ever made. And I can't see any good in it, and it's going to impact us. So I thank you for what we're doing to regulate it. Yes, the horse is out of the barn. I get that. But I can only imagine how many deaths will happen because of this drug. It's a drug. It's not like a vitamin C that we're talking about. It's a drug. It's an illegal drug. They made it illegal for a reason. I've seen it in other cases too. So I just want to thank you as council for your due diligence on regulating this, and staff for putting their effort into it, and I support what we are doing right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councilmember Trickey and Councilmember Purington?
Go ahead, Councilman.
Councilmember Purington and then Councilmember Trickey.
Thank you. And I will just echo what you're saying, Mike. I try to look at this. I mean, I don't know how to look at it as a positive. I see it as a real detriment to our youth. I see it as a detriment to our public safety issues that we already have. To say, oh, gee, let's see, what can I think that's positive? The thing that I see positive is that we're working to regulate it very rigidly right now, because if we don't, we can always back off, or future councils can back off regulations if they find that they're, too much of too stringent. So right now, I would encourage this council to keep moving, and staff, I'm just really pleased with the way that you're moving forward with this. I think we do need to take a good approach, and to have, whether you call it research, investigations, whatever you want to call it, we need more information. We do need time. So I applaud the direction that the staff has gone on this one. So I'm sorry, Denise, I can't find a lot of positives out of this. I really can't.
Councilor Trickey.
Can you ask the chief if there has been any impact on crime in the last 8 months because of the legalization of marijuana in Billings? No, I don't expect an answer right now, but I'm just wondering if they've seen anything that indicate that any of the crime or anything like that, the bad things that are happening are going on there. The only other thing that I would say is I didn't get a chance to share this today, but I spent a lot of time on the DEA website today. And on the DEA website, you will see a whole bunch of different things about all the various different drugs that they are responsible for trying to enforce the laws on. And I want you to take a look at what they're actually saying about marijuana. They are not saying the things that we are hearing about in terms of the fear that is being pushed here. Yes, it is true that people who don't have a balanced emotional and mental state can sometimes go a little bit further if with marijuana. But there's no causal link there that it's the marijuana that causes it. It's only ever been shown to be correlational. And the language in the DEA website is very specific about that. They point out that there is not a causal link there. They don't even mention gateway drug on there. So we're hearing a lot of fear in here. And the reason that I brought up that amendment to that whereas is it was stating that we had determined in fact that these things were true. And we have not, as an organization, determined these things as fact. And frankly, if you look at the DEA and the other national organizations that currently have this as a Schedule I drug, they have not determined this as fact. Yeah, there are problems. There are problems with everything that we do. But let us go forward with policy that is based on fact. And I think that the staff has been very, very committed to trying to do that.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Boyette and Ronnie?
Question.
Okay, so the question has been called, so we will proceed to a vote on whether to vote. It requires 2/3. We've got 10 of us present tonight, so 6.6 will need 7 votes. So if in favor of proceeding to a vote at this time, please raise your hand. Voting in favor are council members Shaw, Neese, Joy, Cole.
I'm only giving 6.6.
We won't count you there. I guess Tariki, Purington, Boyette, and Brown. So I guess that gets us to 8. So, okay, we'll proceed to vote. The motion is for approval with the change in that recital that was mentioned earlier. If in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, please say nay. Motion passes unanimously, and thank you for that discussion. That concludes item 11, and those are all of our items, regular agenda items. We'll move to public comment on non-agenda items.
Dennis Halberstadt, 78 27th Street West, room 122. I'd like to talk what was brought up. Billings is singularly fortunate to enjoy a diverse system of beautiful parks and also a myriad of walking and bike trails throughout our wonderful city. About a year ago, recently, Billings TrailNet and our Public Works Department suggested that we have $2 a month be assessed on all city utility bills and to help fund our parks and trail systems. I've been around the trail systems and they are really busy, all of them in the city of Billings. And I would just suggest to City Council it would be a voluntary assessment similar to what the state parks do. If you go to Yellowstone Park, they have certain assessments, but it would certainly, I would certainly support assessment, and I would hope the City Council would work hard as I would towards that realization. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Additional comments on non-agenda items?
Catherine Card, 2815 4th Avenue South. Mayor and council, I've come to you many times in the last 8 or 9 months about the encounter I had with a outlaw motorcycle gang, Galloping Goose gang, and the police and others at the Road Dog Toy Run last December. I've come to many times presenting documents on many issues that I've had about that. Within the last couple months, month and a half, I have presented to you data that is evidence, I believe, of direct or indirect relationship or ties between local law enforcement and the Galloping Goose outlaw motorcycle gang. That evidence, which is social media posts, and you have seen pictures of it, has been called libelous. It's been called, implied that I'm lying to bring it. And I just call both Chief St. John and the city to present evidence, hard evidence, that it is not true. I know it's hard to imagine that we would have ties within the law enforcement community to violent gangs that are committed to living outside the law and to doing violence and trafficking drugs. On Color 8 this last week, there was an article that I want to read to you. Maybe some of you saw it, but it's a good example of, yes, it can happen in our community. It happens in other communities. Some of the references that I've sent you in my documents, if you've read those, you'll know that it does happen. There are ties between the violent 1% outlaw gangs and the military and also law enforcement. And it's sad. So this is a Walla Walla corrections officer arrested, alleged member of a violent motorcycle gang. This deals with another motorcycle 1%er gang, the Pagans, but it's the same as the Galloping Goose. They operate under the same agenda and means of operation. This is a Washington Department of Corrections officer was one of 2 arrested Thursday, alleged to be an outlaw motorcycle gang members, and it names them and says that they're members of the Pagans outlaw motorcycle gang. It says, according to the Walla Walla County Sheriff's Office, the gang participates in violent crime, trafficking, and racketeering. Both men are indicted in Georgia on multiple counts, including violation of the Street Gang Terrorism and Prevention Act. They are set to be extradited to Georgia. I really ask you to educate yourselves about the Galloping Goose, but also the other 1% gangs that are here, and consider the evidence that I have presented to you all, and also to present concrete evidence that I'm wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on anything that wasn't on our agenda this evening? Do not see any, so we will close public comment on non-agenda items, move to council initiatives. Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry I don't have anything to pass out, so I'll read this. I move to initiate amendment to the Billings zoning code to regulate marijuana businesses, and I'll speak to the motion once I get a second.
Second. Okay, motion made and second to direct staff to say it again slowly.
I move to initiate an amendment to the Billings zoning code to regulate marijuana businesses. And the intent is to the intent of this amendment is to define zoning districts and use standards for any and all marijuana businesses for the health, safety, and general welfare of the residents of Billings. The zoning code allows the city council and the zoning commissioner or the city county planning board to initiate amendments to the text. as I understand, there's some deadlines that need to be met, and it comes through the council. They can meet the deadlines faster, so it has to be made, the initiative has to be made today. And I think what I'll do is if you don't mind, I will let Chris or Nicole speak to the timeliness of what this initiative needs to be done.
Sure. Okay, go ahead, staff. My understanding is this is to set in motion the larger permanent regulation scheme that we've been discussing.
Right. This is a necessary piece of the process. So we had that discussion last week at the work session about what we were thinking the zoning regulations should be. You gave us some specific direction on how to craft that. This is just formally initiating that so we can bring that back to you. We will be sending out a legal ad tomorrow to notify the public of the zoning commission hearing on that draft amendment to the zoning code, which will happen on Tuesday, October 5th. We have to give at least 15 days notice, so that will be published this coming Friday. And then we'll have a draft ordinance to disseminate to anyone who would like to see it. And then staff will be working on findings and facts and giving information to the zoning commission and to the city council and the public about why those regulations are crafted that way, why we believe these protect the health, general welfare, and public safety. And we'll just go from there. And then we'll be in front of you on October 25th for the first reading.
Okay, thank you very much. So the motion is to set that process in motion, direct staff to continue down this path, get it in front of the zoning commission. Obviously not a lot of details on the exact nature of that, but we would see what staff comes up with. We've had a lot of discussion, of course, so we have a pretty good idea, but discussion, we have a motion before you as an initiative. Discussion on the motion. Council Member Joy.
Thank you. I think I have a question for you, Ms. Cromwell. As I was speaking about having a positive vision, our growth policy sets out those things that we want our city to look like as positive statements, which I think was a little bit misunderstood. But anyway, those are all positive statements. Now, how do you arrive at the facts of finding? How do you arrive at facts that will determine how the zoning regulation are based on findings? We cannot simply say, we pulled it out of thin air. We have to have that basis in findings. So how do you go about establishing those facts through this process? Thank you.
Right. It's a little different than a map amendment, because then you're dealing with a very specific location, a very specific zone district. So for text amendments, it's kind of a different animal. So we say, in that case, we say, okay, we have a growth policy guidelines for strong neighborhoods. So one of the things that this council has stated is that they would like these types of businesses to not be close to neighborhoods. How do we do that? Well, we choose zoning districts that are, in general, separated from those neighborhoods and those neighborhood zone districts. We also want to preserve our community fabric, which includes schools and parks and churches, kind of those big pieces in our civic life. So how do we protect those from this use that this council has said they want not to be close to those? We say, okay, we're going to create a buffer area, a separation requirement. That's how we accomplish that. Another growth guideline is prosperity. So one of the ideas in that is to support local businesses, provide new opportunities for new types of businesses. So not regulating it out of the city or creating such a set of stringent regulations that it can't go anywhere. We're providing the opportunity for that new business to come into our community. Those are the types of findings we would look at to support a zoning amendment.
Thank you. Councilmember Poyet?
Thank you. I guess, Roy, I'm wondering, what's the difference between your initiative and what staff's going to be doing between now and December 31st anyway? Aren't they the same thing?
As I understand, and Gina may back me up on this, but this is a legal process that we have to follow to get the process started. I don't think the staff can just come up and say, hey, we're going to change the zones. The council will have to direct them to do that. And Gina, is that correct?
Exactly. You have to initiate an amendment to the text. Either the council, the city zoning commission, or the city county planning board can do that. But one of those governing bodies has to do it.
So Mayor, why wasn't this brought forward rather than have one of the council members do it? Shouldn't somebody here have said, duh, you guys need to do this right away?
And I think that's actually what has happened in past discussions. But Chris, you want to comment?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, my apologies. So as a part of the process, in order to be in compliance with our statute and law, we did initiate this. The staff initiated, approached, first, honestly, Deputy Mayor, who then approached Councilmember Neese to carry this forward. So this is initiated, but technically it can't be initiated by the staff. We need one of these bodies, formal bodies, to formalize the initiation. Obviously, we're well down the path of drafting these things.
Councilmember Ronning and Purington?
Thank you. I knew I would get my conversation in before that question came. This is addressing the facts and how we come to get facts, and a comment that was made in regard to time, and that we are in a time frame, and this is the job we all ran to do and got elected to do, and so now it's our responsibility to say the time frame is on us, and we've got to read the things that the staff members are sending us. So when they're sending us peer-reviewed documents, or I'm forwarding them on to you because they came from staff, that means we have to have them read by the time we get here, and those are fact-finding information that we're being presented. So in that regard, we are receiving facts from the staff. We are receiving peer-reviewed documents that our staff has investigated and has researched and is providing to us for information. So it is on us to come prepared. If we are in a time frame and we know that, if there are special meetings that have to be called by the committee, we're going to have to step up and do that as a council. So that responsibility is on us to do the work. And so thank you. Just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Councilmember Purington.
Well, just a comment about, where this came from. I would imagine that this was part of that committee meeting that you have been involved in. Nope. That some of that was generated in that? Okay.
Councilmember Purington, Mayor and Council, I would say it's a technical requirement that it's not a policy kind of question. It's something that was brought to my attention as procedurally a step we have to take.
Sure.
So that's why it was brought this way. And it's, I guess the policy debate could be which of the three entities do you want to have take the action, but under this time frame, I think you're the obvious one to take charge and move this thing forward. But one of the other two could have done it as well.
Okay. Further discussion on the motion for this initiative? Thanks. Seeing no other discussion, if the motion is clear, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. If opposed, nay. Motion passes unanimously. Any other initiatives?
Yeah, I'm going to do one just because I don't want us to get out of here before I'm out.
I know. Councilmember Trinke has made an initiative that we delay, just twiddle our thumbs for 12 minutes. I rule that to be out of order, and we are adjourned.
5 dispensaries in those 3 zones outside of those 1,000